base of the end of the world starting with 5 million points. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Shuang Service Area. The knife missed, and the middle-aged woman stood up straight, holding the knife with both hands, locking her eyes on the person in front of her, and taking a fighting stance. The person's quick reaction just now was definitely not an ordinary person. Luo Ren was also observing the middle-aged woman. Judging from the speed and strength of the knife just now, this woman should be an evolver, but her level is not high, just an ordinary level 1 evolver. In such an environment, it is normal to kill strangers, rather than let them go, so he did not get angry. Just as he was about to explain, the middle-aged woman moved again, sprinting over, swinging a machete, and sweeping through thousands of troops. It seems that I have to subdue this person first, before I can make her quiet down and listen to me. Luo Ren's current thinking is that population is the first priority. If it is not necessary, it is best not to kill or kill less. The so-called unnecessary refers to the survivors who are struggling to survive, and the criminals who have not violated the bottom line of humanity. They can become residents of Chiang City or other city-states after transformation. As for the criminals who violated the bottom line of humanity, it can only be said that their nature is like this and cannot be reformed. Putting them in Chiang City will only affect the public security of Chiang City and bring heavy losses, so for such people, they must be killed. The blade cut through the air and whistled. If it were an ordinary person, this knife would definitely not be avoided and would be cut in half. However, Luo Ren is not an ordinary person. He stretched out his left hand and grabbed the attacking blade. Clang! It was like a collision of swords. Sparks flew everywhere, and a crisp sound was made. The middle-aged woman's face was full of horror. In her eyes, the person in front of her caught the sharp blade with his palm and was unharmed. Such defense made her think of zombies at the first time. However, the person in front of her did not look like a zombie at all. He was completely the same as a normal human. Could it be that a new species has mutated again? Just as she was wondering, Luo Ren moved, pulling his left hand back, so fast and so powerful that she couldn't hold the knife, and it slipped out of her hand. In the next second, a cold light flashed, and she wanted to retreat, but the knife was already on her shoulder. Her breathing stagnated a little, and she didn't dare to act rashly. "Can you listen to me now?" Luo Ren said. The knife slowly moved away from the middle-aged woman's shoulder, and then threw it to Lin Yap, shouting, "Go on." The man in front of her didn't kill her, which surprised the middle-aged woman who was determined to die. Could it be that he left her life because of some physiological needs? But when she saw the woman behind this man, she felt that it was impossible for him to leave her life because of this need. Her appearance and age were not as good as that woman, so how could she leave herself because of physiological needs? Seeing that the woman didn't act rashly, Luo Ren continued, "First of all, we are not here to cause trouble, otherwise, you would be a corpse now." After waiting for a moment, the middle-aged woman nodded, which should be an expression of agreement. "Actually, I've already said that we were just passing by here and borrowed a place to rest for a while, that's all," Luo Ren said again. Swish, Linya jumped over the defensive fence and walked to the middle-aged woman. She said in a calm tone with kindness, "Sister, we are really just passing by. When we saw the service area, we came in to rest for a while and then continued on our way." Perhaps because Linya looked smart and cute, the middle-aged woman moved her lips and finally spoke the first sentence. "You'd better leave immediately to avoid unnecessary trouble." Trouble? Luo Ren thought about it and smiled immediately. "It's okay, we are not afraid of trouble. Besides, we just want to rest for a while, and we will leave immediately after resting." The middle-aged woman frowned and said, "You don't look like bad people, so I advise you to leave quickly." She looked at Linya and advised, "Turn around now and return the same way to avoid a disaster." Luo Ren waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter, no matter what disaster is coming, we will fight against it and cover it with earth." He just thought that the middle-aged woman was on guard and wanted to scare them away with words, but he didn't buy it. Lin Ya was already a level 2 evolver at this time, and there was such a powerful level 3 evolver beside her. She was not afraid of any trouble, so she had no intention of retreating. She said, "Big sister, we are not afraid of trouble. Please let us go in and rest for a while. After resting, we will leave immediately." The middle-aged woman saw that persuasion was ineffective and shook her head helplessly, saying, "Since you don't listen, I won't persuade you anymore. You are not bad people. You can rest for a while. Please follow me in." After that, she turned and walked towards the supermarket, followed by Luo Ren and Lin Ya. "My name is Lin Fang. What are your names?" asked the middle-aged woman. "My family." Lin Ya suddenly got excited and said, "My name is Lin Ya, from Luo County. Brother Luo's full name is Luo Ren. Although his surname is Luo, he is not from Luo County, but from Chiang City. No, he should be from H City." Luo Ren was about to introduce himself, but Lin Ya got there first, so he could only look at Lin Ya helplessly. "You are from Luo County?" Upon hearing this, the middle-aged woman Lin Fang stopped and looked back at Lin Ya and said excitedly, "My fellow villager, I'm also from Luo County." "Really?" Lin Ya grabbed Lin Fang and said, "Sister Lin Fang, I didn't expect that you are also from Luo County. That's great. I haven't met a fellow villager for a long time. Let me tell you, when a chatty fellow meets a fellow villager in a different place, it's like a chatty talk." Luo Ren stood aside and listened for a long time. Seeing that the two of them had no intention of ending, he coughed a few times and said, "I told you to. Let's go in and talk again." Ah, ha ha ha. The word fellow can always quickly bring them closer together. In just a few minutes, Lin Fang had a lot of smiles on his face, and the eyes he looked at the two of them became much softer hearing Luo Ren's words. She slapped her head, took Lin Ya's hand, and held Luo Ren with the other hand, and said enthusiastically, "Look at me, come here, let's talk after we come in." Stop. At this moment, an angry shout came from behind the three of them. Looking back at the same time, they saw 5 or 6 men, holding crossbows in their hands, aiming here. One of them had an angry face. Luo Ren thought they were looking for trouble, and was about to subdue these people, when he saw Lin Fang let go of his and Lin Ya's hands, and stood in front of them. He heard her say, "What are you doing? These are guests, hurry up, put away your weapons." Several men were immediately stunned. The anger on the leader's face, which was full of anger, disappeared, and his small eyes, with big doubts, asked, "Lin Fang, I just saw that they wanted to capture you. What do you mean now?" Lin Fang explained, "The two of them are passers-by. They are tired from driving and want to rest here for a while." Chapter 252 Wuoyang Manor, Part 1. After hearing this, several men looked at each other, then put away their crossbows and walked forward. The middle-aged man who had just spoken looked at Luo Ren and Lin Ya for a while. When he saw Lin Ya, he frowned slightly and said in a dialect accent, "Girl, you are so beautiful, and you are running around. It's very dangerous." Lin Fang stepped forward and pushed the man's forehead with her finger, saying, "Damn it, you care about others. This is our fellow villager from Luo County, Lin Ya Point, and this brother Luo Ren from H City." Then she introduced, "This is my man. You can just call him Lao Chen, and these Lin Yu, Chen Wei, Chen Crossing, Xian Jian Mu. The 5 of them are our Shuang Service Area Survivor Shelter 5 Vajra Guardians." Walked over, approached Luo Ren and Lin Ya, and whispered, "Actually, they are 5 coolies. They usually do hunting and guarding." Although the voice was small, Lao Chen and the other 5 could still hear it, and they all laughed and didn't care. Among them, Lin Yu scratched his head and smiled innocently. "Sister Lin Ya, you are so pretty." Lin Ya blushed slightly at such straightforward praise and said, "Thank you. Why are you standing there? Let's go in and talk." Lin Fang called out. Everyone entered the supermarket, and Luo Ren looked around. The shelves in the supermarket were turned into beds, and simple partitions were made with wooden boards to divide them into small compartments. As soon as they entered the supermarket, Lin Fang called out, "Everyone, come out. They are not the evil people from Wuoyang village." A moment after the voice fell, rustling sounds came from each compartment, and then Luo Ren saw heads sticking out one by one. These people looked at him and Lin Yao in surprise, but still did not dare to come out. Until Lin Fang called out again. These people walked out of the compartment. After counting carefully, there were 38 people in this small supermarket, both men and women, mostly children. To be precise, in addition to Lin Fang, Luo Chen and the other 5, there were 4 injured adults, and the rest were children. Everyone sit down. You must be hungry. Let's eat now. Lin Fang walked to a large aluminum pot, opened the lid, and a faint smell of meat wafted out. The children's stomachs immediately growled. Everyone, line up and come one by one. After Lin Fang said this, the children lined up obediently, holding a small bowl in their hands, waiting to receive food. Luo Ren looked at the large aluminum pot, which contained some large bones, and not much meat. Come, please sit down. Lin Fang served food to the children, and Luo Chen came over with a few chairs, to invite Luo Ren and Lin Ya to sit down. Thank you. Luo Ren and Lin Ya thanked at the same time, and sat down. Old Chen looked at the children queuing for food, sighed, and said, we teachers took students out for a trip. On the way back, we stopped at this service area to rest. But who knew that the world would change after this stop point? Originally there were 61 students, but now there are only 29 left. The same is true for our teachers. There were originally 8 teachers leading the team, but now there are only me, my wife, and teacher Xian. The teacher Xian, he mentioned is Xian Jian Mu, and his eyes are full of sadness at this time. Lin Yu couldn't help laughing when he heard this, with tears in his eyes, and said, after working, I made some money, so I wanted to take my parents out for a trip, but who knew that my mother suddenly went crazy and bit off my father's neck. Luo Ren shook his head slightly. These are the various aspects of life in this era. Lin Yap, who has always been talkative, was silent after hearing this. After a long silence, Luo Ren decided to change the topic to divert everyone's attention, and asked, Brother Chen, is the Wuoyang Manor that Sister Lin Fang just mentioned a shelter? Hearing the word Wuoyang Manor, Luo Chen's eyes sank, and he said, it is indeed a shelter for survivors, but it is better to say that it is a place where people are eaten than a shelter. There, ordinary survivors are producing tools, doing heavy work every day, but eating porridge. It can be said that a 200-pound fat man will definitely become a skinny person after entering Wuoyang Manor for a month. And women. At this point, he paused for a while, glanced at Lin Yap, and then said, all women, no matter how beautiful they are, will become playthings of the upper class of Wuoyang Manor. These people even set prices for women and trade them as commodities. After hearing this, Luo Ren's eyes showed a trace of disgust, and then asked, how strong is this Wuoyang Manor? Very strong. Luo Chen clenched his fists and said, they are at the beginning of the end of the world. The military sub-district that occupied Dongjiang City for a period of time relied on the weapons and equipment inside to travel around Dongjiang City, hunt mutant zombies, and have many powerful evolved humans. After a pause, he continued, just the day before yesterday, we went out hunting and were discovered and followed by the Wuoyang people. The next day, they brought troops to forcibly capture us back to Wuoyang village. Fortunately, several of us have eaten the thing in the mutant zombies' brains, so we beat them back. We didn't go out to hunt just now, but to investigate. We found traces of Wuoyang village people around, which shows that we have been monitored and can't stay in this place. Lin Ya frowned slightly and said, no wonder Sister Lin Fang just asked us to leave, and said that, if we didn't leave, we would be in big trouble. It turned out to be this Wuoyang village. Luo Ren then asked, then where are you going? Old Chen said, although Wuoyang village is powerful, we have heard that there is a force called Yancheng, which is also in Dongjiang City. Yancheng is not weak in strength, and has a better living environment. We plan to go there to join it. He then asked, Brother Luo, Sister Lin Ya, do you want to go to Yancheng with us? Luo Ren and Lin Ya looked at each other, and Luo Ren smiled and said, Brother Chen, we just came out of Yancheng. Oh. Luo Chen and the others were immediately surprised, and at the same time, their hearts skipped a beat, and they hurriedly asked, why do we have to leave Yancheng? Is it a place where people are eaten like Wuoyang village? Don't worry, brother, the living conditions in Yancheng are still good. The reason we left Yancheng is because we have something important to do and need to go to Xianwu Mountain in Luo County, Luo. Ren smiled and explained immediately. That's good. Hearing this, Lao Chen and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They were really afraid that Yancheng was also a place where people were eaten without leaving any bones. If so, they would have to find a new place to go. Luo Ren looked at Lin Yao and asked, Xiao Yap, this Wuang manner is so powerful, why haven't I heard Ziyan, Zizu, Uncle Lin Wu and others mention it? Lin Yao thought for a while and explained, at present, information is blocked, and Yancheng is located in the valley jungle. We usually hunt and search for food nearby. This is Shuang County, which is quite far from Yancheng. It's not surprising that we haven't heard of Wuang manner. That's right. Luo Ren asked curiously, then how did you know Yancheng, Brother Chen? Chapter 253 Wuang Manor, Part 2. We met a person when we were hunting. The man said that he came out of Yancheng to collect food and got separated from his companions. He couldn't remember the way back and walked to Shuang County in a daze. After we asked him, we determined that he was not a bad person, so we gave him food. Who would have thought that due to extreme hunger, he took 2 big bites and choked himself to death. That guy was also unlucky. He had a chance to survive. Who would have thought he would be so cowardly as to be choked to death? After Lao Chen finished speaking, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. I see. Luo Ren rubbed his chin. He heard a question from Lao Chen's words, so he asked, as you said, you met that person only when he got lost. In other words, you only know that there is a place like Yancheng, but don't know how to get there? Lao Chen nodded and said, indeed, before I met you, this was indeed a problem, but now, he chuckled and said, you are from Rock City, so you must know how to get to Rock City. This problem can be easily solved. Luo Ren looked at Lin Yap, winked, and said, Xiaoya, you know this route better than I do. Tell Brother Chen and the others. Lin Yap said, no problem. Then she asked, Brother Chen, do you have a map of Dongjiang City? It's okay if you don't have white paper, but it will be rough to draw on white paper by the way. There are also pens. Any color will do. Map? Old Chen frowned and said, my major in college is geography. When I was in college, I had a habit of carrying an atlas with me. After saying that, he got up, walked into a cubicle, rummaged around for a while, and then came out with a book with a yellow cover and a pen. Open the booklet to page 29, which is a detailed map of Dongjiang City. Lin Ya took the map and pen, and began to draw the route to Rock City. We are here now, Shuang County Service Area, right, Lao Chen and others nodded at the same time, and Lin Ya continued to draw and explain, from here along this highway, Lao Chen and the others listened very carefully, and Lin Ya explained in great detail. Even Lin Fang, who had finished feeding the children and the wounded, came over to listen. After 20 minutes of explanation and drawing, Lin Ya asked, how is it? Do you understand? Lao Chen is worthy of being a geography major. He clearly explained the route from here to Yancheng after just one explanation. Several others were still circling there, but he nodded heavily and said, I understand. Now that Lao Chen has understood, the other people did not ask Lin Ya to explain it again. If they really can't figure it out, they can just go to Lao Chen. They are still very relieved about Lao Chen's professional ability. After talking for so long, come and have something to eat. Lin Fang brought 2 bowls of broth, looked at the right moment to speak, and handed the 2 bowls of broth to Luo Ren and Lin Ya. Unable to resist the hospitality, Luo Ren and Lin Ya took the broth. It was better to call it broth than bone broth, because apart from a little bit of meaty aroma, the whole bowl of soup only had meat foam floating on the surface. Lin Yu smelled the aroma of meat, swallowed his saliva, and asked, sister-in-law, why don't you serve us a bowl? You guys have to drink it yourself. Lin Fang scolded. Luo Ren took a sip of the broth and slightly, unexpectedly, it still tasted salty, and tasted better than expected. Lin Fang saw Luo Ren's reaction after drinking the broth, and couldn't help but ask, not bad, brother Luo, it tastes good. Luo Ren answered without thinking. Lin Fang couldn't help but feel happy after her cooking skills were affirmed and said with a smile, if it tastes good, drink more. There is still more in the pot, and the children can't eat much, okay? Luo Ren nodded heavily. Okay, you drink, I'll go out and bask in the sun day after. Lin Fang finished speaking. She walked to the supermarket door, held happily handle, and opened the supermarket door. At this time, Luo Ren's ears twitched, his brows furrowed slightly. He stood up quickly, pulled Lin Fang away, and shouted, be careful. Bang! The supermarket door that was about to open a crack was knocked open. Luo Ren took a closer look and saw that it was a man. The arrows slung around his waist were exactly the same as those used by Luo Chen and the others in their crossbows. There was a gunshot wound on the man's left shoulder, which was still bleeding. When Lin Fang, Luo Chen and others saw the man, they immediately rushed forward. The man took Luo Chen's arm and said anxiously, evacuate quickly, the people from Wujiang's are coming. When Lin Fang, Luo Chen and others heard this, their expressions changed drastically. Luo Chen said anxiously, damn it, Wujiang's movements are really fast. Hurry, don't bring anything except weapons. Let's evacuate immediately. Everyone was in a hurry and panic. Lin Fang and Luo Chen stayed in the supermarket to take care of the children and the injured, while the other four left the supermarket to drive the car over. But after a while, the other four people returned to the supermarket, looking panicked. Instead of driving their cars over, several cars were parked outside the supermarket, and hundreds of armed men were lined up in the open space of the service area. The people from Wujiang's have arrived. People inside, listen, I'm the 5th elder of Wujiang village. You have to go out and surrender within 3 minutes. Otherwise, you will be killed without mercy. A deep voice came from outside. Old Chen, what should we do now? Someone asked. Luo Chen had no choice at this time. There were hundreds of people on the other side, and they were all fully armed. There was also a 5th elder. He had heard of this 5th elder. His name was Karo Lun, and he was a real level 2 evolved human and these few of them are just ordinary level 1 evolved humans. So how can they be Karo Lun's opponents? Wujiang village. Luo Ren pondered secretly, and after about a minute, he suddenly asked, Brother Chen, how many people are there in this Wujiang village? Old Chen didn't know why Luo Ren asked how many people there were in Wujiang village at this time, but he still answered, I don't know much, but the western, northern and southern parts of Dongjiang city have almost been plundered by them. Conservatively estimated, there should be 120,000 to 130,000 people. Hearing this number, Luo Ren's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he had secretly made up his mind, and immediately walked out of the supermarket with big strides. Hey, brother Luo. Old Chen wanted to hold Luo Ren, but was held back by Lin Fang. The other people all turned their eyes to Luo Ren, but no one said anything, or stepped forward to stop him. Sister Lin Yap, what is brother Luo going to do? Is he going to surrender? The held old Chen looked at Lin Yap and asked in confusion, brother, Luo will never surrender. Lin Ya shook her head. She was also a little surprised. She didn't know what Luo Ren was going to do, but the only thing she knew was that Luo Ren was definitely not going to surrender. Lin Fang had fought with Luo Ren and knew how powerful he was. In her mind, she judged that Luo Ren was at least a level 2 evolved human. If he went out now, there might be some way. Even if there was no way, it wouldn't be a big problem if he just wanted to escape. After all, the 5th elder Karo Lun was only a level 2 evolved human. However, if Luo Ren really escaped, she would definitely look down on him, because he was a scumbag among scumbags for escaping alone, and leaving Lin Yap, who was traveling with him, behind. Luo Ren walked out of the supermarket, and saw hundreds of soldiers with guns, and live ammunition in front of him. In front of these soldiers, there stood 3 men. The man on the left had a face full of flesh and a strong body. The man on the right had a gentle face and a slender body, like a gentleman, but Luo Ren saw cruelty in his eyes. The man in the middle had a naturally angry look and was dressed in luxurious clothes. He had a sense of majesty without anger. Luo Ren guessed that this man should be the so-called 5th elder Karo Lun. Karo Lun saw Luo Ren coming out of the supermarket. Seeing that Luo Ren looked indifferent and looked contemptuous, he immediately became angry and pointed at Luo Ren and ordered, "Kill him." The man on his left immediately took out the pistol from his waist and pointed the black muzzle at Luo Ren without saying a word. Bang! The muzzle spit out flames and the bullet shot at Luo Ren. Luo Ren just tilted his head slightly and the bullet missed and hit the wall of the supermarket point at the same time. Luo Ren walked towards them like a stroll and every step was full of provocation. Being able to dodge bullets surprised Kao Lun. He snorted and said, "He is still a cultivator, but judging from his appearance, he is at most a martial artist." Kao Yi, Kao, you too, kill him for me. Kao Yi and Kao were the people on his left and right. They clasped their fists towards him and said in unison, "Disciples, obey your orders." The two took a step forward. Kao Yi, who had a face full of flesh, looked at Kao and said, "Second junior brother, you go first. Then I will obey your orders respectfully." As soon as he finished speaking, Kao's eyes became more cruel. He drew out the short knife from his waist, rushed to Luo Ren at a very fast speed, raised the short knife, and chopped directly at Luo Ren's neck. Go to hell. The knife was swift and tricky, trying to cut off Luo Ren's neck directly, but was it really that easy? When the knife was about to hit his neck, Luo Ren retreated half a step, leaned back slightly, and the short knife passed half an inch in front of his neck. Kao's first strike failed, and the fierce light in his eyes became more intense. He still held the knife in his right hand, and swept it in the opposite direction. His purpose was very clear, and it was still Luo Ren's neck. Luo Ren did not choose to dodge this time. He stretched out his right hand, and grabbed Kao's wrist. He squeezed it hard, and heard the sound of bones breaking. Then he raised his leg, and kicked Kao in the chest, kicking him out, and rolling to Kao Lun's feet, seriously injured and unconscious. In these two moves, Luo Ren controlled the speed and strength. To outsiders, he was only at the level of a peak evolver of level 1, looking for death. Kao Yi, stop. At the critical moment, when Kao Yi was about to take action to avenge Kao Lun called him, and he had no choice but to loosen his clenched fist. Papa. Kao Lun clapped his hands, stared at Luo Ren for a while, and said, "So you have some skills. I was wondering why you were so arrogant." At this time, he smiled and said in a calm voice, "You are very good. This elder likes you. As long as you kneel down and kowtow 3 times and worship this elder as your master, I will forgive the provocation just now. Moreover, from now on, you will have all kinds of food, wine, and beauties. How about it?" The people in Wuang village are not also immature, right? They have read too many martial arts novels. Master and apprentice, beauties, and wine. However, if you like this, I don't suggest playing a part with you. Thinking so, Luo Ren sneered, "Just you? I'm afraid you are not qualified to be my master. In my opinion, you should kowtow to me 3 times and worship me as your master from now on. Snakes, insects, rats and ants, simple tea and light meals are all available. What do you think?" The smile on Kao Lun's face disappeared at this moment, replaced by infinite gloom, and the peace in his words also disappeared, leaving endless murderous intent. "Since you want to die, then I will fulfill your wish." Chapter 254 Killing, Part 1. Kao Lun opened his right hand, and someone immediately brought a long knife from behind him. The knife was silver and black in color, with forging patterns on the blade. It looked like a good knife, and it was a beautiful knife. Reed holding the knife in one hand, he brushed the blade with his left hand and said, "My horse leather steel knife has killed countless ordinary zombies since the day it was forged. There are also many thin zombies and fat zombies. I have also killed faster red-eyed zombies. Pass. As for the people." Kao Lun licked his lips, showed a ferocious smile, stretched out 2 fingers, and said sinisterly, "No more, no less, a total of 200 people." Luo Ren frowned slightly, with undisguised disgust in his eyes. In the current environment, most people had blood on their hands. However, there are definitely not many people like Kao Lun who take pleasure in killing, and are proud of the number of kills. Luo Ren is also extremely disgusting with such people, because they have completely exceeded the bottom line of human nature, and should not continue to live in this world. Kao Lun noticed the disgust in Luo Ren's eyes, and his heart became even more angry. The expression on his face became more ferocious, and he swung the knife down with the tip, pointed directly at the ground. You will become the 201st killer. The moment the word ghost fell, Kao Lun shot out like an arrow from a string. Kao Yi praised, Master is indeed powerful, and this speed is much faster. Luo Ren's eyes narrowed, his brows furrowed slightly, and he said to himself, this speed should be at the level of a quasi level 2 evolver, but why do I feel that he is faster? While he was doubting, Kao Lun was already close, holding a knife in both hands, and stabbed towards him, intending to pierce his chest. However, for a quasi level 2 evolver, such a speed is too slow for him. He can easily avoid it by moving his steps slightly and turning to the right side. The thrust failed. Kao Lun immediately stopped the forward thrust and swept out with his backhand. This knife looked sharper than Lin Fang's machete, so Luo Ren did not choose to catch it with bare hands, but suddenly increased his speed and ducked behind Kao Lun. Kao Lun felt the figures in front of him wavering, and Luo Ren disappeared. Then he heard Kao Yi shouting, Master, behind you. He immediately turned around and swept out with the knife, but the knife still missed, and there was no one behind him. When he looked at Kao Yi, he saw a look of horror on his face, pointing behind him. This made him feel a thump in his heart. At the same time, he heard Luo Ren's voice behind him, I won't play with you anymore. He turned around suddenly, but before he could swing the knife, it was snatched away. Almost at the same time, a slap hit his face. Pointer. Crisp sound echoed in the sky above the service area, and a huge force was poured out. Kao Lun was directly slapped down, and his cheek came into close contact with the ground. Kao Yi and the hundreds of soldiers all looked horrified. Luo Ren could kill Kao Lun instantly, but he didn't, because there were still hundreds of soldiers, and he had to use this guy to threaten hundreds of soldiers to retreat. At the same time, he still had some doubts in his heart that needed Kao Lun to explain. Kao Lun felt the burning pain on his left cheek. He spat out a mixture of blood, saliva, and a few teeth. He touched his left cheek with his hand. As soon as he touched it, the pain made him gasp. Just as he was about to get angry, suddenly, a sound of breaking through the air rang in his ears, followed by a stinging pain in his neck. At this time, the horse leather steel knife that belonged to him was placed on his neck. The person holding the knife was none other than Luo Ren. In the past, he killed others, but today someone put a knife on his neck, which made him feel an extreme death threat, and his anger was revealed in an instant. Swallowing his saliva, he said tremblingly, I can't see Mount Te, but my brother is actually a peerless strong man. I hope that he will spare my life for the sake of Wuang village. He moved out of Wuang village immediately, because he knew that he alone could not suppress such a strong man. Stop talking nonsense, and ask your people to put down their weapons. Luo Ren shouted. His life depended on someone else's thoughts. Kao Lun did not dare to disobey and immediately shouted, Kao Yi, you and the others put down your guns. Kao Yi's eyes flashed, remembering Luo Ren's strength, and he was about to throw away the weapon. When he saw the hesitant soldiers, he immediately shouted, hurry up, put down the weapon. When the soldiers heard this, they immediately put their firearms on the ground without hesitation. Let them raise their hands and retreat 30 meters. Luo Ren said again, everyone, raise their hands and retreat 30 meters. Kao Lun immediately gave the order without any hesitation. Kao Yi and the other soldiers then raised their hands and retreated obediently, leaving hundreds of firearms on the ground. I've done all this, do you think you can let me go? Kao Lun asked cautiously. When he saw Luo Ren's eyes, he said anxiously, don't worry, from now on, I will never bother you again, and my people will never bother you and your friends. Luo Ren ignored him and shouted, Brother Chen, Sister Lin Fang, please get the children in the car and leave here quickly. Not long after the words fell, Luo Chen and Lin Fang led everyone out of the supermarket. Luo Chen immediately asked Lin Yu and the other four to drive the car over. Kao Lun, Kao Yi, and many soldiers from Wuangzhuang had different reactions when they saw such a large group of children in the supermarket. Kao Lun just took a peek and then looked away. After all, his life was the most important thing. The expression of Kao Yi, whose face was full of anger, did not change, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Most of the hundreds of soldiers were somewhat moved. Childhood is the most innocent age for everyone. Seeing so many children, these soldiers couldn't help but recall their own past. Soon, 4 people from Lin drove 2 vans and 2 pickup trucks. The windows of the 4 vehicles were reinforced with iron mesh and iron blocks, and sharp iron spikes were installed at the front and rear ends. Old Chen and others immediately organized the children to get on the bus, as well as the wounded. They knew the situation was urgent, so they moved quickly. In less than 10 minutes, except for Old Chen, Lin Fang and Lin Yao, everyone else had gotten on the bus. Brother Luo, come here quickly. Old Chen called out. Luo Ren said, Brother Chen, you guys go first. Old Chen said anxiously, this won't work. Wuoyang village is coming for us. How can we leave you alone and walk away? Brother Luo, you guys come here quickly. There's still room on the bus. Brother Chen, you guys go first. Brother Luo and I still have to go to Xianwu Mountain. Besides, these crooked melons and cracked dates can't do anything to Brother Luo and me. Before Luo Ren could answer, Lin Ya spoke up. Lao Chen, Sister Lin Ya has said so, and Brother Luo's strength is there. If we stay here, we will become a burden. Let's go. Seeing that Lao Chen was still hesitant, Lin Fang persuaded him. As expected, they were a couple. After Lin Fang's words, Lao Chen no longer hesitated and said, in this case, we will leave first. We will go to Yancheng and wait for you to come back there. Lin Ya nodded and said, okay. Then, she walked towards Luo Ren and stopped 1 meter behind him. Buzz buzz buzz, the roar of the engine sounded, and Lao Chen, Lin Fang and others drove the car onto the highway. The roar became weaker and weaker, and the car became smaller and smaller, until it disappeared from sight. Chapter 255 Kill, Part 2. Old Chen and the others had already left, so it would be easy to handle things. Luo Ren's mouth curled up slightly. Seeing this, Caroline immediately begged for mercy. You see, your friend has left, can you let me go? Luo Ren laughed and said, don't worry, I still have something to ask you. When Caroline saw Luo Ren smile, he felt that the probability of survival had greatly increased, and he even said, you ask, I will tell you everything I know. The other party's cooperation saved a lot of trouble, so Luo Ren asked, how many evolution crystals did you take? Evolution crystal? Caroline was puzzled for a moment, then suddenly realized, and said, you are talking about the things in the zombies' brains, we call it spirit stones. He thought for a moment, and then said, I took 7 first grade spirit stones, and I took 1 pseudo second grade spirit stone. Spirit stone. Are the people in Wuoyang village so second year students? Luo Ren complained in his heart, and then asked, you said you only took 1 pseudo second grade spirit stone, then you are only a quasi level 2 evolver now. Why is your speed faster than that of an ordinary quasi level 2 evolver? Quasi level 2 evolver, Cairo. Lun was confused again, and after muttering for a while, he finally understood and said, the quasi level 2 evolver you are talking about is called the half-step warrior realm in our place, and I'm at this realm point. Every realm can be improved with the help of cultivation techniques, but if you want to break through to a higher realm. Speaking of this, he glanced at Kao Yi and the soldiers in the distance, and whispered, you must have the spirit stone in the zombie's head to break through. Now it was Luo Ren's turn to be confused. There was also a cultivation method, which he had never heard of. He silently asked in his heart, system, do you know the so-called cultivation method? Life can only evolve through life energy, and there is no so-called cultivation. The direct denial of the system made Luo Ren even more curious, and he immediately asked, what kind of cultivation method do you mean? Caroline looked embarrassed and said, the cultivation method is the secret of my Wuoyang mana. It can only be taught to the core disciples of Wuoyang mana. In this case, there is no need for me to save your life. Luo Ren said, exerting pressure with the long knife point. Caroline felt the coldness and stinging on his neck, and said anxiously, I'll tell you. Luo Ren raised an arc at the corner of his mouth and said, go ahead. Caroline said, the method of cultivation is a special posture combined with a breathing method. He reached for his pants and took out a blue booklet from his trouser pocket. The cover of the booklet was written with 3 big characters Wuangong. He handed it over and said, "This is the method of cultivation, Luo." Ren took the booklet with one hand and flipped through a few pages. It depicted various postures and then explained the breathing method in words. He put the Wuangong in his pocket, thought for a while, and put away the long knife. The long knife was removed from his neck, and the stinging and coldness disappeared at the same time. Kaolun was overjoyed, thinking that the man in front of him was going to let him go. Luo Ren said, "Let's go." Kaolun was immediately delighted and thanked him repeatedly. "Thank you, thank you." When he turned around, a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes, and his fists clenched involuntarily. The anger in his heart returned, and there was also endless hatred and murderous intent. Luo Ren looked at Kaolun's back, stepped back a few steps to Lin Yap, handed the knife to Lin Yap, and whispered, "Kill him." Lin Yap looked at Luo Ren in surprise, and said puzzledly, "Didn't you let him go? Didn't you hear that there were 200 people killed by his knife? Such a person who doesn't take human life seriously is a big disaster to keep, and I didn't promise to let him go." Luo Ren said, "Well." Lin Yap's eyes condensed, nodded, and clenched the long knife. With anger and hatred in his heart, Kaolun remembered Luo Ren's appearance firmly, thinking about how to persuade the owner of the manor to take revenge on him after returning. Suddenly, the sound of breaking wind came from behind him, and his hair stood on end. He turned around immediately and was shocked. The originally inconspicuous woman showed extremely fast speed at this time, and he could no longer dodge point buff, the horse leather long knife, this precious knife, that he had found many craftsmen and many metals, and spent all his efforts to make, pierced his own heart at this moment. Then, he fell down with anger, hatred, and unwillingness. Cao Yi and hundreds of soldiers were stunned for a while, and then reacted. Those soldiers immediately rushed to the guns on the ground. Cao Yi turned around and ran away. Luo Ren jumped out, caught up with Cao Yi in an instant, grabbed his neck, and squeezed it hard. Cap. Cao Yi's neck was directly crushed, the vitality in his eyes quickly dimmed, and the whole person was limp like mud. He left Cao Yi's body behind and stood in front of hundreds of soldiers. His sharp eyes frightened them and stopped them immediately. Luo Ren couldn't kill all the hundreds of people, so he said, "The main culprit is dead. You can keep your lives. Go away." The unexpected decision of the man in front of him made hundreds of soldiers stunned, and then they were overjoyed and bowed to thank him for his mercy. Luo Ren said, "Go away quickly." Hundreds of soldiers fled immediately, and their speed increased to the extreme, fearing that Luo Ren would regret and kill them. Suddenly, a groaning sound fell into Luo Ren's ears. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, "Where is the groan?" He looked at the sound and saw that the unconscious Kiowa woke up at this time and almost forgot about him. With a swish, he arrived beside Kiowa. He opened his eyes slowly, and at first he saw a foot falling from the sky and stepping on his neck. With a click, his eyes widened and the light in his pupils went out. "Since you are unconscious, don't wake up again," Luo Ren said. "Brother Luo." Suddenly, Linya's voice fell into his ears again. Luo Ren looked back and heard her shouting again, "Brother Luo, come here quickly, I can't pull out this knife." Luo Ren walked over and stabbed Kaolun through with the long knife. As a level 2 evolver, Linya couldn't pull it out. "This is unscientific, let me try." Holding the handle of the knife, he pulled it back with all his strength. Buff. The moment the long knife was pulled out of the corpse, blood sprayed out like a high pressure water gun for washing cars. Fortunately, Luo Ren reacted very quickly and dodged it. Holding the knife in his hand, he looked at Lin Yap, who stuck out his tongue and said, "It was just a joke. Brother Luo, don't be angry." Luo Ren was helpless for a moment, then put the long knife on Kaolun, wiped the blood off the knife, and said, "It's enough rest, we should continue on our way." The two returned to the SUV parked on the side of the road, started the vehicle, and drove forward. Soon after the two left, several Wuangzhuang soldiers returned. They nimbly carried the bodies of Kaolun, Cao Yi, and Kiowa on their backs and left here. Chapter 256, Unexpected Incident. Unconsciously, the sun gradually set in the west and entered the dusk. The fiery clouds on the horizon attracted Lin Ya's attention. She held the window frame with both hands, and there seemed to be little stars in her eyes, smart and lively, exclaiming, "It's so beautiful. Brother Luo, look." She shouted and turned to look at Luo Ren. When she saw that Luo Ren was concentrating on driving, she immediately shut up. In silence, she glanced at the watch on Luo Ren's hand, and finally couldn't help but asked, "Brother Luo, what brand is this watch? It's pretty good. How much did you buy it for? Oh, by the way, you don't need to buy it now. Find a specialty store and buy it directly for free. It's just a watch," Linya said for a while, sounding like she was asking, but she didn't give Luo Ren a chance to answer. Luo Ren is now used to it. Linya's words go in one ear and out the other, just as a gust of wind blowing by. After talking for a long time, Linya finally shut up again. Probably because she was tired. She glanced out the window and saw a rusty road sign on the side of the road, but the words Jiangshan County were the most conspicuous. Seeing the 3 words, Linya was surprised and said, "We are almost in Jiangshan County." Luo Ren asked in confusion, "What's wrong with Jiangshan County?" Jiangshan County is adjacent to Luo County. After Jiangshan County, it will take another hour to get to Luo County, Linya explained. After listening to the explanation, Luo Ren was also very surprised. He couldn't help but increase the force of his foot on the accelerator to increase the speed. Unfortunately, the accelerator had been stepped onto the bottom, and it was already the fastest speed at this time. The sun was setting, and the sky was getting darker. Luo Ren frowned and said, "It's not suitable to travel in the dark. Let's find a place to rest for the night." Linya agreed, "I think this is better." After that, she looked out the window and said, "But we are on the highway now, and there is no place to rest around." Luo Ren said, "It's okay. We can make a fire on the road, yeah." Linya nodded. It's completely dark now. At this time, the sun had completely set, without any buffering opportunity, and the world fell into darkness. Luo Ren immediately turned on the car lights, but the next second, squeak, he stepped on the brake with his right foot, and the 4 tires of the high-speed car stopped turning instantly, and the tires rubbed 20 to 30 meters of marks on the ground. Linya looked at the mess in front of her and swallowed nervously. Luo Ren let out a long breath and said, "Fortunately, I reacted in time." At this time, there was a mess in front of them. Dozens of cars collided with each other, completely blocking the road. If they wanted to get through, they could only manually clear these roadblocks. The 2 got out of the car. Linya saw a lot of abandoned cars, opened her mouth and asked, "Brother Luo, shall we do it?" Luo Ren rubbed his temples, waved his hand, and said, "Not for now. Let's rest here for one night, and talk about it tomorrow." "Okay." Linya nodded, then opened the car door, took out food and water, and a fire source, which was actually a lighter. Handed the water to Luo Ren and said, "Hey, Brother Luo, drink some water." Although it was already dark, the light provided by the bright moon had a weak lighting effect. Looking around, Luo Ren said, "There are woodlands on both sides of the road, and there are no villages or anything like that." Looking at the car accident scene in front, their cars made such a big noise, but there was no abnormal reaction. It seems that there is no need to worry too much about zombies when resting here, but you have to be wary of evolved animals. While Luo Ren was observing the surrounding environment, Linya had already picked up a lot of dry firewood, and then built a blazing fire, and turned off the lights. Squatting beside the fire, roasting the dried meat brought from Yancheng, the tempting aroma quickly spread. After Luo Ren smelled it, his stomach couldn't help but growl. After all, he drank a bowl of meat soup with only meat particles in the Shuang service area all day. It would be strange if he wasn't hungry. Squatting together, staring at the dried meat on the fire for a while, his stomach was urging him, and he asked anxiously, "It should be ready to eat, right?" "Not yet. The weather in the south is not drier than in the north. Although our air-dried meat is called air-dried meat, it can't be eaten raw. It has to be cooked before it can be eaten." Linya explained patiently. Gurgle. Luo Ren's Adam's apple rolled, and he swallowed his saliva. Since Linya said so, he could only wait for the meat to be roasted before he could enjoy it. The aroma of meat drifted for several kilometers with the wind, and it was not just Luo Ren and Linya who smelled the aroma of meat. rustle. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps on dead branches and leaves was heard. Although the sound was small, it could not escape Luo Ren's ears. Zombies? Evolved animals? Luo Ren immediately became alert, listening to all directions, watching all directions, and his muscles were tense at this moment, ready to attack at any time. Lin Ya is a level 2 evolver and her senses are very sensitive. Seeing the subtle changes in Luo Ren's eyes, she listened and heard the sound of footsteps on dead branches and leaves. She said, "Brother Luo." As soon as she opened her mouth, she saw Luo Ren shook his head slightly, and she immediately shut up. Luo Ren suddenly smiled, then touched his belly and said, "Zio Yap, is this meat cooked?" Lin Ya knew that Luo Ren did this on purpose, and immediately started to perform, shrugged, and said, "If you are impatient, you can't eat hot tofu, and you can't eat cooked meat. Brother Luo, just bear it for a while, it will be fine soon. I can bear it, but my stomach, listen, it keeps urging me." Luo Ren rubbed his stomach and said helplessly, "It's coming soon." Lin Ya said. Half a minute later, Lin Ya picked up the barbecue and handed it to Luo Ren, saying, "Brother Luo, it's time to eat." Luo Ren quickly took the barbecue and couldn't wait to take a big bite, but at this moment, whoosh, the arrow shot through the air and hit Luo Ren directly, knocking him down in an instant. Before Lin Ya could react, 5 men came out of the jungle on the side of the road. When these 5 men saw the barbecue, their eyes were full of brilliance, and when they saw Lin Ya under the light of the fire, their eyes flashed with lustful light. Ha ha ha. One of the short men with a scar on his face laughed and said, "Brothers, it seems that we can not only eat enough tonight, but also eat enough." Ha ha ha. The first one who was full refers to the barbecue, and the second one who was full refers to Lin Ya. Lin Ya was angry, and was about to get up and kill the 5 men, but something unexpected happened. Swoosh. A sound of breaking through the air was heard, and a snake-like thing shot out from the darkness, wrapped around the neck of the scarred man, and dragged the struggling scarred man into the darkness. Scarface's 4 companions were immediately horrified, and hurriedly fled in the opposite direction, ignoring the barbecue and beauty's whoosh whoosh whoosh. There was more than one creature in the dark, and it did not intend to let the remaining 4 people go. After dragging Scarface away, 3 red long slimy creatures shot out from the darkness, quickly wrapped around the necks of the other 3, and then dragged them into the darkness. After these people were dragged into the darkness, they were like a stone sinking into the sea, without any sound, but Lin Ya smelled the smell of blood. Fear grew in her heart. Looking at Luo Ren who was lying on the ground, she cried, "Brother Luo! Brother Luo!" But no matter how she called, Luo Ren never responded, as if he was dead. This made her even more frightened. She quietly moved to the side of the car and took out the long knife she got from Caroline. There was no other choice. If she didn't resist, she would die. If she resisted, she would still have a chance to survive. Her eyes were cast on the only one left in the 5-man bandit group. This person had a homemade crossbow on his waist and a steel knife in his hand. Whoosh! The red long creature shot out from the darkness again. The target was clearly the last person in the 5-man bandit group. This person should be an evolver, and his reaction was much faster than the other 4. He turned around quickly and chopped down the steel knife diagonally. Point clang, it was like chopping on steel, making a sound of metal colliding. The long creature was chopped to the ground and quickly retracted into the darkness. The man was overjoyed, but he didn't want to fight. Instead, he turned around and ran away immediately. Whoosh! At the moment he turned around, there was a sound of an arrow breaking through the air. He hurriedly held the steel knife to block it. Clang! Sparks burst out, and he couldn't help but be overjoyed, thinking that he had blocked it. But the next second, severe pain came, and he looked down and saw a bone arrow as thick as a little finger pierced through the steel knife and his chest. This man still wanted to escape, but his vitality quickly faded, and he collapsed. After walking a few steps, Lin Ya was even more horrified when she saw this scene. How strong was this creature in the dark that could pierce the steel knife? She couldn't help but look at Luo Ren. Tears were already rolling in her eyes, and she cried, "Brother Luo, don't he die?" Swish. A black shadow swept out of the darkness and came to the man shot to death by the bone arrow, then used sharp nails to break the chest of the corpse in front of him, dug out the heart, ate it in 3 or 2 bites, and then enjoyed it with a face full of enjoyment. After enjoying it, it turned around and looked at the fire, or more accurately, at Linya next to the fire. Linya saw the creature in front of her and was shocked. It was a creature she had never seen before. Humanoid, thin lower body, wide upper back covered with porcupine-like bone spurs, and its eyes are similar to the eyes of the level 3 power zombie that attacked Yansheng that day, but much smaller. This strange creature laughed strangely, with a strange expression on its face, and walked towards Linya step by step. Linya immediately stood up and wanted to escape, only to hear 3 swish sounds, and another black shadow swept out of the darkness. This time 3. These 3 black shadows cut off Linya's other 3 ways. Linya looked closely and found that these 3 creatures were of the same type, also humanoid. Except for the scalloped eyes and bulging chest, they seemed to be no different from other zombies, but upon closer observation, there was a thin line from the corner of their mouths to the roots of their ears. 4 unknown creatures surrounded Linya, and she was at a loss. The agility in her big eyes was gone, replaced by anxiety and fear. Hello, the backstab creature raised its hand, then swung it down heavily, and made an inexplicable sound from its mouth, like a language. The other 3 creatures opened their mouths, and the thin lines extending from the corners of their mouths to the roots of their ears were all mouths. After their mouths were fully opened, the tongues of the 3 creatures popped out like the tongue of a chameleon. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257, Alien Evolution Zombie. 3 tongues were shot at 3 parts of Linya's body, her left and right hands, and her neck. In this situation, she could not just sit back and wait for death. She could only fight to the death. Read, holding the knife in both hands, shout and be bold. At this moment, the 3 tongues were approaching. Luo Ren, who was lying motionless on the ground, instantly jumped up. In a flash, he grabbed the 3 tongues and shouted, "Here comes the knife." Linya was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed and threw the knife immediately. Luo Ren took the long knife and pulled hard. The 3-headed long-tongued creature that was struggling fiercely was pulled directly. Under the moonlight, the blade exuded a sharp aura, and then a cold light flashed. With a very fast knife, the 3 long-tongued creatures were beheaded almost simultaneously. This scene happened in an instant. When the bone-spurred creature saw this, it immediately stopped. Not only did it not dare to move forward, it also took several steps back to distance itself from the resurrected human being in front of it. It put its hands back, pulled out a bone spur on each side, and then projected it out. The bone spurs were extremely fast, faster than a crossbow arrow. When they rubbed against the air, they made a sharp whistling sound and shot towards Luo Ren. Without any explanation, Luo Ren swung his long knife and cut off the 2 bone spurs with 2 clang sounds. Then he jumped out, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the bone spur creature. At this time, the bone spur creature was pulling out 2 more bone spurs and wanted to continue shooting, but it had no chance. PFFTA. Cold light flashed past, and the horse leather steel knife passed between the bone-spurred creature's neck. The movement of the bone-spurred creature suddenly froze, and a red line appeared on its neck. The red line gradually became clearer, and dark red blood flowed out. Finally, the terrifying looking head fell, and dark red blood sprayed more than half a meter high. Call. Luo Ren let out a long breath. He thought these things were so powerful, but he didn't expect them to be vulnerable. However, he was still confused. What on earth were these? Zombies? Evolving animals? He couldn't help but secretly ask, "System, what kind of creatures are these for? Have bone spurs on their backs, called porcupine zombies. With a huge mouth and bulging chest, it is a chameleon zombie." Luo Ren frowned. There were actually alien species among the evolved zombies. He couldn't help but ask, where did these alien evolved zombies come from? All heterogeneous evolved zombies are evolved zombies above level 2, but not all evolved zombies above level 2 are heterogeneous evolved zombies, as the name suggests. Heterogeneous evolutionary zombies are evolutionary zombies mutations. After they swallow the evolutionary crystals or flesh of evolved animals at the critical point of evolving from level 1 to level 2, they will have a certain chance of merging with the genes of the evolved animals they swallowed, resulting in mutations. Gain magical abilities beyond speed and strength. After listening to the explanation, Luo Ren suddenly realized. Soon, he had another unknown thing and asked, is there a chameleon here? He remembered that chameleons all live in tropical rainforests. Although it is in the south and the temperature is quite hot in summer, it does not have the conditions to form a tropical rainforest. Then he felt relieved. After all, this was not the previous world, and it was normal for the animal division to change. Brother, Luo, you are not dead. Lin Yab walked over with small steps and cried with joy. She thought Luo Ren was really dead, and she was going to die too. She didn't expect that Luo Ren was pretending to be dead, and she wasn't dead either. How could she be unhappy? Luo Ren looked back at her and said with a smile, if you want to kill me with just one crossbow arrow, you are looking down on me. It scared me to death. I thought you were really dead, brother Luo. Linya patted her chest, took a deep breath, then pointed at the porcupine zombie on the ground and asked, brother Luo, is this a zombie? Luo Ren nodded and said, these are indeed zombies, collectively referred to as heterogeneous evolved zombies, like this one covered in bone spurs, whose specific name is a porcupine zombie. There are also those 3 long tongues called chameleon zombies. He scratched his head, couldn't help his curiosity, and asked, by the way, are there chameleons here? Linya thought for a while and said affirmatively, yes. Did I guess it right? Luo Ren had a thought in his mind, and then asked, don't chameleons all live in tropical rainforests? There are also chameleons here. The origin of chameleons is indeed the tropical rainforest, but that doesn't mean they can't survive in other places. I remember there was a large flower, bird, fish, and insect market in Jiangshan County. Not to mention chameleons, just thighs. Lin Ya glanced at Luo Ren's thighs and immediately changed her mind. There are even big pythons with thick calves. Then, the people in Jiangshan County are really in danger. Luo Ren said. Lin Ya was silent for a while, then turned her attention to the corpse of the porcupine zombie and asked, brother Luo, since these are zombies, do they also have evolution crystals in their heads? Logically speaking, it is indeed the case. Luo Ren raised the horse leather steel knife and slashed at the head of the porcupine zombie, saying, if there is any, just split it open and see. PFFT, the porcupine zombie's defense was not as good as that of the power evolved zombie. Its head was split open with a single knife, and a bright green evolutionary crystal rolled from it to the ground. Pick up the evolution crystal. Under the moonlight, this evolution crystal looks like ice jade. Very beautiful. Luo Ren's eyes narrowed, and he said in surprise, it's actually a quasi level 3 evolutionary crystal. Linya was even more surprised. She didn't expect that the zombies in front of her had reached level 3. What about the remaining 3? She couldn't help but look at the 3 heads lying on the ground with wide grins and long tongues. When her heart was beating, Luo Ren strode towards the 3 heads, and then chopped 3 times in a row. The 3 heads were split open, and the evolution crystals rolled out. She immediately came forward and asked hurriedly, brother Luo, what level are these? But Luo Ren was a little disappointed and said, these are just level 2 evolution crystals. Level 2, that's not bad. Even these level 2 evolution crystals are very precious, and there are 3 of them. Linya said a lot of comforting words. Luo Ren walked to the side of the fire, his eyes scanned and fixed on the kettle, picked up the kettle, rinsed all the evolution crystals with the clean water in it, and then picked out the quasi level 3 evolution crystals and swallowed them. He was used to the evolution of the level 3 evolver, so there was no big reaction on the surface. Half a minute later, the evolution ended, and he clenched his fists. He felt that his strength had increased a little. He looked at the 3 level 2 evolution crystals, and then looked at Lin Ya. Although he was a second level evolver, he was just an ordinary primary level 2 evolver, still too weak. After thinking for a long time, he hooked his finger at Lin Ya. When Lin Ya came over, he handed her 3 level 2 evolution crystals and said, eat them. Lin Ya was extremely surprised and asked in disbelief, this, really for me? After Her relationship with Luo Ren was not close, but just ordinary friends and a cooperative relationship. The previous level 2 evolution crystal was incredible, and this time there were 3 evolution crystals, which looked fake, no matter how you looked at it. In this encounter, the zombies are low level, and not many in number. I can quickly resolve the battle, while protecting your safety point. If the porcupine zombie is not a quasi level 3, but a level 3, I will be entangled by it, and cannot be distracted to protect your safety. Wouldn't you be in danger? Therefore, only when you become stronger can I let go. Luo Ren's words were very blunt and straightforward. Linya couldn't help feeling uncomfortable, but it was only for a moment, because Luo Ren was telling the truth. She held the 3 level 2 evolution crystals tightly, and said to Luo Ren, "Thank you, brother Luo." This thank you came from the bottom of her heart. Even if Luo Ren had a reason to give her the 3 evolutions crystals, Luo Ren nodded and said, "It is not advisable to stay here for a long time. You should take the evolution crystals quickly, and then we will leave here." "Okay, Lin." Ya nodded heavily, and then without hesitation, she put the 3 level 2 evolution crystals into her mouth at the same time. Within 5 seconds, the majestic life energy burst out in her body, strengthening every part of her body. Luo Ren felt a little painful for losing 3 level 2 evolution crystals, but thinking that there would be less trouble in the future, the pain was somewhat relieved. He retracted his gaze and looked at the roadside forest, frowning slightly, thinking, 5 humans are ambushing here, and one of them is an evolver. I think their shelter should be nearby. Stroking his chin, thinking for a long time, he said to himself, let's find a safe place to rest for a night and make plans tomorrow. At this moment, Linya's evolution has reached the end. With her soft moan, the evolution ends. She suddenly opened her eyes, and the light blue light flashed for nearly 20 seconds. Intermediate. Level 2 evolver. Luo Ren said secretly. To reach this level, it can be called first class combat power. Linya's face is full of uncontrollable excitement. Once upon a time, she also thought that one day she could become as powerful as Li Xian and Li Zixu. Now it seems that it is not out of reach. Brother. Luo. Linya called sweetly. At this time, Luo Ren's position in her heart is no less than Lin Wu. She really treats him as her own brother. Luo Ren examined it, nodded slightly, and said, very good. Linya scratched her head and said with a smile, thank you, brother Luo, for your praise. Then she asked, brother Luo, where are we going now? Luo Ren looked at the forest on the left, where the 5 humans came out from. His eyes froze slightly, then he looked back at the vehicles blocking the road ahead, and said helplessly, let's clear the roadblocks first. Lin Ya's strength increased greatly, and she felt that she had endless energy. When she heard about clearing the roadblocks, she was not worried, but excited. Without saying anything, she rolled up her sleeves and started working. Under her speed and strength, one abandoned car after another was kicked away, overturned, or lifted up and thrown away, and the noise was very loud. However, it is difficult to do this kind of thing without making a lot of noise. Luo Ren also started to clean up, and came to a car. This car was considered intact among the pile of cars, and the car window glass was not broken. He twisted his neck, and was about to take action, when suddenly, a pair of hands from the driver's seat threw themselves on the car window, and then a skinny face was printed on the glass window, which looked like a scene in a horror movie. Luo Ren frowned, and seeing the zombie driver still with his mouth open, he silently said, go on the road with peace of mind. He kicked the car away, and fell into the jungle on the side of the road. After a busy period, they finally cleared a road, and Luo Ren and Lin Ya immediately drove the car through. The light was not good at night, and although there were headlights, for safety reasons, Luo Ren did not drive the car at daytime speed. In the vast night, there was only one car driving on the wide highway, which looked so lonely. Chapter 258 Lin Yan-039, S Choice, Part 1. The chirping of birds woke Luo Ren from his light sleep. In such an environment, he would never enter deep sleep. This is the most basic safety awareness. The 2 drove for more than 10 minutes last night, far away from the place where the incident occurred. They randomly found a safe place to park and rested in the car for the night. Point at this time, the sun has climbed up to the top of the mountain and a few white clouds are floating in the blue sky. Listening to the chirping of birds, it would have been very pleasant in the past. Nowadays, it is no longer comfortable, but full of dangers. Such a place not only has to deal with evolved animals, but also zombies and selfish humans. Luo Ren opened the door and got out of the car. It was dark last night and he could only roughly observe the surrounding environment. He could not see anything clearly. Now that the sun had risen, the surrounding environment came into view clearly. Point at this glance, he discovered that they had actually stopped on the high-price bridge. Looking under the bridge, there was a river. Although it was wide, the water was urgent nor turbid, flowing down leisurely. No wonder you hear the sound of water neither flowing. Luo Ren thought to himself, then looked towards the river. There are dozens of houses on the riverside. It should be a very small village. Looking around, there are figures wandering on the cement streets of the village. Obviously zombies. Not just on the street, but on the roof of a small 3-story foreign-style building covered with ivy. There was also a figure standing blankly. The figure was already skin and bones, even more modest than the zombie driver who was tied up by a seatbelt. At this time, Linya also got out of the car. Her hair was messy and her eyes were bleary, but she slept soundly. When I walked to the bridge, I saw the river flowing under the bridge, and then the villages on the riverside. It was like drinking 100 bottles of Red Bull. The sleepiness in my eyes disappeared in an instant, replaced by excitement and excitement. Luo Ren looked at her and asked curiously, "What's wrong? So excited, Lin?" Ya clenched her hands into fists and said, "I used to pass by this place often when I was going home by car, and neither the river nor the village had changed much. When I saw these, I knew I was almost home." "You mean, this place is not far from Luo County?" Luo Ren asked in surprise. "Yes." Linya nodded heavily and said, "In my memory, after passing here, you can reach the Luo County toll station in half an hour. After entering the station, walk 500 meters and there will be a fork in the road. The right fork leads to the city, while the left fork leads directly to Xianwu Mountain." After saying that, a look of struggle appeared in her eyes, as if something painful had disturbed her good mood. "Okay." Luo Ren excitedly punched the fence, making a loud noise, which immediately attracted the zombies wandering around the village, including the skinny zombies on the roof. The zombie grabbed it with both hands and rushed forward without thinking about its own safety. It hit the half-man-high top floor wall and fell headfirst. Point bang. Although he was skinny, his bones alone weighed 40 or 50 kilograms. He fell from a height of more than 10 meters to the ground and fell to pieces. The noise was even greater. The rest of the zombies immediately gave up the sound in the distance and were attracted by this close one. Attracted by the huge movement in Kai. Luo Ren shrugged, turned around and got into the car, saying, "Let's go." Linya followed him into the car and fastened his seatbelt as a habit. The vehicle started on the journey again. After driving for about half an hour, we turned onto the ramp and walked for another 3 or 4 minutes. As Linya said, the toll station in Luo County appeared in sight. Because Luo County has Xianwu Mountain, it is a tourist county and receives nearly 10 million tourists every year. Therefore, the traffic flow at its toll station is still huge. There were more than 100 cars at the toll station at this time. Among these cars, there were many zombies wandering around, including a tall, fat level 1 strength zombie. However, this is nothing to Luo Ren, and even to Linya, it is just a small problem, and it just requires some effort. Those zombies had very keen hearing, and when they noticed the movement of vehicles here, they immediately opened their mouths and came over here. Luo Ren handed the horse leather steel knife to Linya and winked at her, his meaning obvious. Linya saw the toll booth ahead and saw those zombies. The virus outbreak had come. She had seen many zombies and killed many zombies, so she did not have the instinctive fear and nausea that girls have for scary things. He immediately took the horse leather steel knife, opened the door, and got out of the car. His eyes flashed with light, and then he jumped out, his clothes making a crackling sound as they rubbed against the air. From a distance of 100 meters, it took only 3 or 4 seconds for Linya to spot a level 1 zombie at first glance. It is said that catching the thieves first captures the king, although the level 1 zombies do not even have the most basic ability to control and cannot be called kings at all. Under the sun, a cold light flashed by. The horse leather steel knife was indeed a good knife. It directly cut the head of a level 1 zombie into 2 parts. Apart from being stained with blood, there was no damage at all. Unlike ordinary sabers, after splitting the head of a level 1 zombie, it will collapse. After killing the level 1 zombies, Linya did not stop. Instead, the attack became more fierce. A zombie would surely die when the knife fell. In less than 10 minutes, more than 100 zombies were killed. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Linya breathed a sigh of relief, smiled and waved to Luo Ren. Upon seeing this, Luo Ren immediately started the vehicle and moved forward, but at this moment, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he saw a level 2 speed zombie with 4 limbs on the ground and skull eyes emerging from the bottom of a truck. In the next second, it headed towards Lin. Ya pounced. He was about to take action when he suddenly remembered that Lin Ya was already an intermediate level 2 evolver and could not easily deal with the small level 2 speed zombies, so he did not take action. Lin Ya sensed the danger and heard the sound of breaking wind at the same time. She snorted coldly and moved her steps to avoid the sneak attack. Then she held the knife in both hands and slashed down diagonally, directly taking the head of the level 2 speed zombie. Poof. As the horse leather steel knife fell, the level 2 speed zombie's head was split in 2 diagonally from the top of the head to the chin, fell to the ground, and rolled out a beautiful evolutionary crystal. Lin Ya was excited. This was her first time to kill a level 2 zombie, and she only used one move. An unprecedented sense of accomplishment filled her heart. At this time, Luo Ren drove the car slowly. Linya came to her senses, picked up the evolution crystal, then ran to the driver's seat window, handed out the 2 evolutions crystals, and said, "Brother Luo, here you go." Luo Ren was surprised that Linya actually took the initiative to hand over the evolution crystal to him. He looked at the level 1 and level 2 evolution crystals in her hand and said, "The level 2 evolution crystal is effective for you. Keep it yourself. Level 1 evolution crystals can also replenish your physical strength, so keep them." I ate 4 evolution crystals from Brother Luo. "These 2 evolution crystals must be given to Brother Luo," Linya said. Looking at her firm eyes, Luo Ren couldn't help but smiled and said, "Didn't I say that if you are stronger, I can be less distracted and keep it for myself?" Chapter 259 Lin Yan-039, S Choice, Part 2. Linya pondered for a moment and finally nodded, saying, "Okay, then I will use it myself." As she said that, she opened the rear door, took out the kettle, rinsed the evolution crystal, and then swallowed it without hesitation. This evolution lasted for 1 minute. He opened his eyes and a light blue light appeared for more than 20 seconds. Luo Ren nodded secretly and said, "If you take a level 2 evolution crystal, you should be able to reach the level of a high level 2 evolver." Thinking of this, he reached into his pocket and quickly took out the blue covered Huangong, thinking to himself, "I almost forgot. I wonder if this so-called practice method is really useful." The system said that life forms can only evolve through life energy, and there is no so-called practice method. But this Huangong really exists. It seems that the only way to find out is to try it yourself. However, now is not the time to try to practice. It will not be too late to try it. After reaching Xianwu Mountain and finding the dragon pattern crystal, he couldn't help but look at the large number of vehicles in front of him, sighed helplessly, and acted as a porter all the way. He pushed the door and got out of the car, saying to Linya, "Zio Yap, let's do it." Linya looked confused and asked, "Brother Luo, the zombies have been killed. Why do we still do it?" Luo Ren pointed his finger forward and said, "If we want to go over, we have to ask these iron shells guys to move aside." Linya suddenly realized that she was going to be a porter again. After a while of struggling, they finally found a way out. The two drove the car into the toll station without rest and entered Luo County. After passing the toll station, they drove another 500 meters to the fork in the road. The car stopped at the intersection. Luo Ren looked at Linya and said, "Zio Yap, are you going to Xianwu Mountain with me, or are you going to find your parents?" Linya looked around and couldn't make up her mind. After seeing all kinds of horrors along the way, her idea of looking for her parents at all costs had been shaken. Although Luo County is a small county, it has a population of more than 300,000. The urban area is the most densely populated place with many zombies. No one can guarantee that there are no zombies above level 2 in that point. If she breaks in alone, the chance of survival is very low, and it can even be said that she is in danger of death. Zio. Yep, I regard you as a friend. Here I want to advise you that, if your parents are in the urban area, not to mention the danger of zombies, humans in the early days of the end of the world are also dangerous in this case. It is highly likely that the person is already dead and now the urban area is even more dangerous. Even if it is just a county town, I dare not enter alone. If you go in. Luo Ren shook his head and did not say it clearly. After a pause, he continued, I think if your parents are really dead, their spirits in heaven do not want to see you get into trouble because of looking for them. Besides, Ziyan is still waiting for you to return in Yancheng. After hearing these words, Lin Yao, who was already shaken, finally made up her mind. With tears in her eyes, she looked at Luo Ren and said, Brother Luo, I will go to Xianwu Mountain with you. Luo Ren touched Lin Yao's head, smiled slightly, and did not speak. Instead, he drove the vehicle to the left fork and headed towards Xianwu Mountain at the same time. In the Wasteland Military District several Z-10 armed helicopters landed on the apron. After they stopped steadily, people in military uniforms got off the helicopters. Liu Yangnian, with a warm smile on his face, greeted them with Xia Chuan and other officers, and shouted, Hey, Deputy Commander Su, long time no see. Yes, long time no see, Commander Liu. The man who spoke was 1.85 meters tall, with a strong and slender body, a resolute and handsome appearance, and the overall style was a combination of a beautiful man and a tough guy. Liu Yangnian shook hands with him and smiled. Hey, Deputy Commander Su, why call me Commander Liu? Just call me Liu Liu. You are the same. You are my senior anyway. You should call me Zhao Su. Deputy Commander Su said politely with a gentle smile on his face. After speaking, he looked at Xia Chuan, took 2 steps forward, and suddenly punched Xia Chuan on the shoulder, saying, Xia Chuan, you are not dead yet. Xia Chuan looked flattered and said, I thought Deputy Commander Su had forgotten me, but I didn't expect that he still remembered my name. You guy, you are asking for a fight, Deputy. Commander Su raised his hand and pretended to hit him. Xia Chuan said anxiously, No, no, no. Brother Su, I'm just joking, just joking. Seeing this scene, Liu Yangnian smiled and shook his head, saying, Zhao Su, I have prepared good wine and food to welcome you. Let's go now. Deputy Commander Su turned his head to look at Liu Yangnian, nodded, and said, Please lead the way. Liu Yangnian led the way, while Deputy Commander Su followed behind with Xia Chuan, chatting and laughing. Further behind, Sun Cakesuan stared at Xia Chuan with a flash of contempt in his eyes. The apron is next to the training ground, where you can see the training ground. Sun Cakesuan looked at the training ground, and the scene of being humiliated by Luo Ren was still fresh in his memory. He gritted his teeth and said, Luo Ren, wait for me. Deputy Division Commander Sun, what are you mumbling to yourself? Suddenly, a hand patted his shoulder. He turned around and saw another officer of the same deputy division level staring at him. He smiled and said, It's okay, it's okay. The officer looked suspicious and said, Really okay? I just heard you say something about Luo Ren. Sun Cakesuan said anxiously, I mean that the base is in a mess under Luo Ren's management, and hundreds of thousands of people are all living in dire straits. Is no need to inspect it at all. The officer frowned and said, You have said these words countless times. Why do I feel that you are deliberately slandering Luo Ren? Humph, whether it is slander or not, you will know when you arrive at the base. After saying that, Sun Cakesuan waved his sleeves and followed Liu Yangnian and others, and at the same time thought to himself, I have seen a lot of private armed forces, and they basically exploit civilians to gain profits. Luo Ren, it is just a larger private armed force. If they want to feed so many soldiers, they must also exploit the so-called hundreds of thousands of civilians. They must treat these civilians with 2 meals of porridge a day to ensure that they do not starve to death. Wait, when everything is unveiled, the military will be furious, and Luo Ren, you will be finished. Ningtang City, Luo County. Luo Ren drove the vehicle along the cement road. The road was lush and green, and figures passed by from time to time. There were birds flying in the sky, mostly sparrows, and other birds, but they were all small birds that would not actively attack humans or other animals. As we drove forward, we saw a curve ahead. We turned the car around the curve and a mountain appeared in our sight. Its peak was shrouded in mist, just like the legendary Holy Mountain. Linya pointed at the mountain and said excitedly, "Brother Luo, it's Wu Mountain." Chapter 260, Mountain Top, Part 1. Luo Ren stepped on the brake with his right foot. The car stopped, and looking at the mountain in front of him, he was more excited than Linya. He breathed a sigh of relief, and said, "Wu Mountain, we are finally here." Looking at Wu Mountain in surprise for a while, then releasing the brake, the wheels continued to roll, and rushed towards the mountain in front. After driving for a long time, he finally saw the mountain gate. However, a few hundred meters away from the mountain gate, Luo Ren chose to stop the car, because Linya said that next to the mountain gate, there is a parking lot built by the Luo County Tourism Bureau for tourists to park their vehicles. The scale of this parking lot is not big, but there are more than 300 parking spaces, and its flow density is still quite large. It's not that they are afraid of zombies, but they are afraid of damaging the vehicle. They still have to rely on this car to go back. Slowly parked by the side of the road, and then the two of them took weapons and some dry food, and got off the car. Looking around, there were only a dozen zombies wandering inside and outside the mountain gate. For a tourist attraction, this is not too many, or even too few. Luo Ren speculated that most zombies should chase living people or hunt wild animals, because of their instinctive desire for flesh and blood. There are only 3 endings: being killed, wandering, and evolving. Oh, there is another one, which is mutation and evolution. Zombies like this usually hide, and don't wander around like ordinary zombies. The two walked towards the mountain gate. The distance of hundreds of meters is not far. It only takes about 10 minutes for ordinary people to walk 1 kilometer. As evolvers, Luo Ren and Linya are much faster, and can reach the mountain gate in 4 or 5 minutes. Those wandering ordinary zombies smelled the smell of fresh flesh and blood, opened their mouths wide, bared their teeth and claws, and rushed towards the two with hungry expressions. Swish, Linya held a horse leather steel knife in her hand. Facing the zombies that were surrounding her, she jumped and dodged. With a knife in her hand, more than 10 ordinary zombies were directly beheaded, ending their sinful lives one after another. After getting rid of these more than 10 ordinary zombies, without any rest time, dense footsteps were heard. Dozens of zombies on the left, with the same hungry expression, dragged their steps, wanting to eat the 2 large pieces of fresh flesh and blood in front of them. Linya turned to Luo Ren and said, "These zombies should have come from the parking lot next to them." "Yeah." Luo Ren nodded slightly, and then said, "Let's do it." Linya attacked again, and the powerful strength of the level 2 evolver was fully demonstrated. Dozens of ordinary zombies were just a few more swings of the knife, and there was no threat. Soon, the subsequent dozens of zombies wandered aimlessly and ended. Linya turned to Luo Ren, but saw Luo Ren looking at the mountain gate. There were 3 big characters carved on the plaque of the mountain gate. Wu Mountain. Taking a deep breath, Luo Ren stepped through the mountain gate, which was also considered to be entering the territory of Wu Mountain. Perhaps it was a psychological effect. After crossing the mountain gate, he actually felt that the air here was sweet, comparable to the other side of the ocean. Linya followed him into the mountain gate, looked at Luo Ren, and asked, "Brother Luo, how should we go?" Luo Ren raised his left hand, and saw the dragon crystal detector on his wrist. He pressed the upper and lower buttons with 2 fingers at the same time, and an energy wave radiated out. Detecting dragon crystal. No dragon crystal found. Please move forward, backward, left and right to improve the detection efficiency. Linya was extremely surprised. She felt that the watch on Luo Ren's wrist burst out with an inexplicable energy wave. She thought it was an illusion, but this energy wave continued and spread almost every 3 seconds. It seems that this is definitely not an illusion. After all, she couldn't help her curiosity, so she asked, "Brother Luo, your watch is so strange. This energy wave is very obvious." Luo Ren once asked the system whether the energy radiated by the detector was only felt by him, and the system directly gave a negative answer. According to the system, this energy is the energy radiated by the detector to detect the dragon crystal. As long as this energy touches the dragon crystal, it will be reflected to the detector, and the location of the dragon crystal will be located. Therefore, this ability is real. Even ordinary people can feel abnormalities, as long as they are close enough. The senses of the evolvers are strengthened several times, so the feeling is naturally clearer. However, the prompt voice issued by the detector can be transmitted through the skin and muscles, so people who do not directly touch the detector cannot hear it. This is not an ordinary watch, it is a metal detector. It will emit electromagnetic radiation to detect special metals. Luo Ren explained casually. Metal detector? Linya was confused, scratched her head, and asked, "Brother Luo, you came to Xianwu Mountain to find special metals?" Luo Ren nodded and said seriously, "Yes, I just want to find the best and toughest metal, to forge a peerless sword, so that I can kill the level 3 power zombies, not just defeat them." Linya was stunned. She crossed many dangers, and traveled hundreds of kilometers to Xianwu Mountain, just to find special metals and forge a peerless sword. In her opinion, this was a bit incomprehensible. Luo Ren smiled and waved, "Don't stand there, let's go." After turning around, he couldn't help but reveal a clever expression. Linya really believed what he said. The two of them walked along the artificially built road for tourists to Climb Point. After walking for a distance, the detector still did not detect the dragon crystal. Luo Ren's heart sank. He raised his hand to look at the detector. At this time, the power had been consumed by nearly half. After hesitating for a moment, he chose to turn off the detection mode to reduce power loss. Looking at the main peak of the mountain, and then looking at the position where you are, the dragon crystal is bred by famous mountains and rivers, which contain magnificent and pure life energy. According to common sense, its breeding location must be in the center of famous mountains and rivers. Although I took a few steps, I'm still in the edge of the area. It is better to climb the main peak of the mountain and start the detection. The probability will definitely be much greater. The main peak of the mountain is surrounded by clouds and mist, and ancient buildings can be vaguely seen between the trees. On the top of the peak, there is a touch of gold looming point. Looking at Linya, he asked, "Xiao Yap, are there any human buildings on the top of Xianwu Mountain?" Linya nodded and said, "Yes, Xianwu Mountain has been a Taoist holy land since ancient times. It was named after the land and called Xianwu Daopei. Taoist temples were built among the trees on the top of the mountain. There is also a golden top on the top. You can see the thunder and fire refining hall in thunderstorm weather." She sighed with regret and said, "It's a pity that an expert proposed to install a lightning rod on the golden top, and then it was really installed. Since then, there has been no more wonders of the thunder and fire refining hall. It seems that the experts in this world are not reliable." Luo Ren thought to himself. After a moment of silence, he asked, "After it was changed into a tourist area, are there any descendants of Xianwu Daopei? Are there still humans living in the Taoist temple buildings?" Chapter 261, Mountain Top, Part 2. "Yes." Linya nodded again and said, "The Xianwu Dao sect has always had disciples passing on the tradition. Even if it is changed into a tourist attraction, there are still more than 100 people. In addition to the staff arranged by the tourism bureau to entertain tourists and perform daily maintenance, it is estimated that there are more than 200 people." After a pause, she sighed and said, "However, at this time, these people may have turned into zombies." More than 200 people. Luo Ren rubbed his chin, thought for a while, and said, "There must be more than 200 people in the Xianwu Dao Hall complex." "Why?" Linya asked puzzledly. Xianwu Mountain is a tourist attraction, and Xianwu Dao sect is a famous sect, so there must be many tourists heading for Xianwu Dao sect, and the Xianwu Golden Summit and Lihuo Refining Hall you mentioned. Such magical buildings are extremely attractive to foreign tourists, so my guess is that the Xianwu Dao sect building complex is definitely more than 200 people, and the number of people may be close to 1,000, or even more than 1,000. Linya agreed. That's right, and the early stage of the virus outbreak was during the summer vacation. Although it is already at the end, the number of tourists is still huge. Let's go. As the saying goes, when the enemy comes, the general will stop it, and when the water comes, the earth will cover it. Luo Ren took a step and rushed to the top of the mountain. Seeing this, Linya quickly followed. It was not like a slow walk for detection, but running straight to the target. The speed was extremely fast. I saw two figures running wildly, and soon they came from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside. Luo Ren and Linya ran wildly all the way, encountered wandering zombies on the way, and solved them. From the foot of the mountain to the middle of the mountainside, except for small birds, there were no other ferocious evolved animals, which was really strange. Swish. Suddenly, two black shadows flashed between the trees on the right. Speak of the devil. Here comes the devil. Luo Ren was still thinking that from the foot of the mountain to the middle of the mountain, there were no other ferocious evolved animals except small birds, but now this one has appeared. However, he did not stop, but continued to run wildly. Linya also noticed something unusual, as if someone was watching her in the dark, but seeing that Luo Ren did not stop, she naturally would not stop either. Swish! Exclamation mark. The creatures in the dark finally couldn't hold back, and flashed out, blocking the way up the mountain. Luo Ren stopped, and Linya stopped with him. When she looked closely, they turned out to be two monkeys with golden red hair, long tails, and blue faces. The two monkeys stood on 2 feet, with an upright height of 1.7 meters, holding sticks in their hands, and the rough appearance should be made by themselves. This is Golden Monkey, Linya exclaimed. In Chiang City, Luo Ren heard from Suantong that there are golden monkeys, the noble monkeys among monkeys, on Xianwu Mountain. It seems that these golden monkeys have also evolved. Chirp chirp, woo woo woo. The two golden monkeys did not seem to have any ill intentions. One of them kept making famous gestures, mumbling in a language that humans could not understand, pointing to the top of the mountain, and then made a grimace, sticking out his tongue, and suffocating. Luo Ren asked, "What are they doing?" Linya looked confused, shook her head, and said, "I don't know either." The two golden monkeys looked at Luo Ren and Linya's confused looks, scratched their heads anxiously, and then walked strangely, showing their sharp teeth, pretending to bite their arms. Luo Ren saw these movements, touched his chin, pondered for a long time, and analyzed. They seem to want to tell us that the top of the mountain is dangerous and there are terrifying creatures. Chirp chirp. The two golden monkeys heard Luo Ren muttering, and immediately got excited, applauded, and nodded continuously. Luo Ren said, "Did I guess right?" Linya's eyes were full of little stars. She looked at Luo Ren with admiration, clasped her hands under her mouth, and said in surprise, "Wow, brother Luo, you are so amazing. You can understand monkey language." Luo Ren was speechless. Did he understand it? He understood it. "Thank you for telling me, but I must go to the top of the mountain." Luo Ren said to the two golden monkeys it should be because of the frequent contact with humans before that the two golden monkeys can understand human language. After listening to Luo Ren's words, they hurriedly waved their hands and performed various breathing postures to scare away the two ignorant humans in front of them. Zao. Yep, let's go. Luo Ren led Linya, dodged the two kind golden monkeys, and ran to the top of the mountain. The two golden monkeys looked at the two people's disappearing backs and shouted Gigi. Approaching the top of the mountain, the two slowed down. Human buildings appeared on the side of the road. They were not Taoist buildings of the Xianwu Dao sect, but in buildings. Due to long-term lack of care, these buildings were covered with ivy, and the paint and pigments were all peeling off. In front of and inside the doors of these buildings, you can see piles of bones, almost all of which are human skeletons. Of course, there are also zombies wandering aimlessly. In addition to these B/U0026Bs, there are more skeletons and more zombies on the road. After slowing down, these zombies noticed Luo Ren and Linya, and surrounded them with their fangs and claws. They didn't care whether there was a road or a high ground under their feet, but only cared about fresh blood and flesh. Because these zombies are all skin and bones, with little meat on their bodies, you can tell at a glance that they have been hungry for a long time, so they are more eager for the sudden fresh blood and flesh. The knife flashed. The blade was cold and sharp, but they were just some ordinary zombies. Lin Ya took action and quickly killed them all. Luo Ren looked at the B/U-0,026Bs on the roadside, frowning. There were so many ordinary zombies, but there was not a single evolved zombie, even a level 1 evolved zombie. Thinking of the actions of the golden monkey, he thought to himself, there are terrifying creatures on the top of the mountain. Could it be that all the powerful evolved zombies are gathered together? Then where will they be gathered? He couldn't help but look at the mountain top, which was not far away. He seemed to be able to see through the obstacles and see the Taoist buildings. Lin Ya turned to Luo Ren's side, and seeing his surprised look, she asked curiously, "Brother Luo, what are you looking at?" Luo Ren retracted his gaze, looked at Lin Ya, and said seriously, "We are about to reach the top of the mountain. There may be great danger. Follow me closely." "Yes." Lin Ya nodded heavily. After walking for 5 or 6 minutes, he saw the mountain gate again. This mountain gate is not the same as the other one. The mountain gate at the foot of the mountain is the mountain gate of Xianwu Mountain, while the mountain gate here is the mountain gate of Xianwu Dao sect. The plaque of the mountain gate is only one word different, which is Xianwu Dao. Taking a deep breath and stepping through the mountain gate, Luo Ren's eyes suddenly condensed, and he heard a few swoosh sounds, and the hidden arrows attacked. His footsteps did not move, and the shadows of his hands were dazzling. The next moment, there were a few more arrows in his hand. There is a trap. Could it be set by zombies? Luo Ren was shocked, but after thinking for a while, he denied it directly. Even a level 3 zombie couldn't set such a sophisticated trap. So, an answer came to his mind. There are still living people in the Xianwu Dao sect, but if they are living people, how can the golden monkeys on the mountainside say that there are extremely terrifying creatures on the mountain? Could it be that the golden monkeys are lying to them? But this is obviously illogical, because there is no need for those golden monkeys to lie to them. Swish. Just as he was wondering, the leaves of the bushes shook, and several figures rushed out. They held weapons and blocked the road. One of them raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Stop, who are you?" Chapter 262 Zhang Xian. Luo Ren took a closer look and saw that the people in front of him were all wearing Taoist robes and had their hair tied up. Taoist priest? At the same time, Lin Ya stepped forward, cupped her fists, and raised her hands, and asked in a Luo County accent, "How many of them are the masters of the Xianwu Taoist sect?" Seeing that Lin Ya was so polite and spoke with a local accent, the Taoist priests immediately softened their expressions, but they only softened a little and remained vigilant. In front of the head, a young Taoist priest in his mid-20s slightly and said, "Yes, we are indeed monks of the Xianwu Taoist sect. The world is full of dangers right now. I don't know where you two came from, and why did you come to our Xianwu Taoist sect?" "We are." Lin Ya was about to answer, but Luo Ren coughed and said, "We came from the outskirts of Luo County." Now not only the inside of the county, but also the outskirts of the county are already a world of zombies and evolved animals. It is difficult for us humans to survive in such a difficult time. Thinking that there is a Xianwu Taoist sect on Xianwu Mountain, and that all of you are monks and martial arts practitioners, you will definitely be able to survive this crisis. So I thought of coming here to seek refuge. These words were so sincere that Lin Ya would have almost believed them if she didn't know the details. She glanced at Luo Ren, admiring him even more in her heart. Not only was he powerful, but he didn't even blink when he told lies. The young Taoist priest was a monk. He was abandoned by his parents when he was an infant. His master picked him up and took him back to the Taoist sect. It can be said that he has never left the mountain for more than 20 years. Although a large number of tourists visit the Taoist sect every day, it has little to do with practitioners like them. The only people who deal with tourists are the staff of the tourism bureau. In addition, Luo Ren's acting skills have been honed so far and have reached their peak. Every subtle movement and the tone of every sentence are sincere and heartfelt, which is more real than real. Moreover, this person has shown great strength by catching hidden arrows with his bare hands. I wonder if I can't did it. Under the premise of having such great strength, he still explained to them patiently, which showed that he was not an extremely evil person. Therefore, after pinching his fingers, he was convinced that this person was 70% not lying. As for the remaining 30%, it was also because Luo Ren had just received the hidden arrow with his bare hands. This was more difficult than dodging, and you could tell at a glance that he was not an ordinary person. In fact, it was almost impossible for ordinary people to climb from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain in such an environment. So he stared at Luo Ren and asked, "Are you an evolved human?" Luo Ren was a little surprised, not because the young Taoist priest saw that he was an evolver, but because as a Taoist priest, he was surprised why he didn't give him a nice name, something like key training, foundation building, etc., but instead labeled it as an evolved human being. Seeing Luo Ren's expression, the young Taoist priest pointed his finger and said, "Evolution is evolution. We must believe in science. There is no such thing as cultivating immortals in this world." Luo Ren's eyes widened. He still believes in science and has not yet cultivated immortality. You can read my mind just by counting with your fingers. Isn't this the legendary mind reading skill? It's not mind reading, it's a Taoist method of speculation and calculation. The young Taoist counted priest again, named Luo Ren's thoughts, and then explained, "We Taoists use the heavenly stems and earthly branches, and then observe the subtle expressions of the person talking to them, as well as the logic behind the words. You can roughly guess what the other person will say next. Of course, this is only a rough estimate, and may not be accurate in many cases. That's not enough." Luo Ren thought to himself. The young Taoist priest then said, "For example, after I say this sentence now, combined with the logic of the words, you should think in your heart, that's nonsense. This is not accurate. I guessed the first two sentences for you." Luo Ren looked at Lin Yap, opened his mouth and said, "Are the Taoist priests from Xianwu Mountain so awesome?" Lin Yap shrugged and said, "I'm not sure either." Luo Ren had no choice but to look at the young Taoist priest again with an expressionless face, thinking, it must not be a mind-reading skill, otherwise I should have seen that I was lying just now. After calming down, he nodded slightly and said, "Master is really powerful. I'm indeed an evolved human being." He pointed at Lin Yap and continued, "My companion is also an evolved human being." Luo Ren didn't have a stubborn mouth, which made the young Taoist feel more favorable. He immediately said 70% to 85%, hesitated for a while, and then said, "I can take you into the temple, but you have to take off your weapons." "No problem." Luo Ren agreed decisively. For him, unless they were missiles, artillery shells and other weapons of mass destruction, ordinary swords and firearms were of little use, and he rarely used them. The two took off their weapons and handed them to their young Taoist companions. The young Taoist priest nodded with satisfaction, and then introduced himself. "Zhang Xian, the 27th generation descendant of Xianwu Mountain, a poor Taoist." After a pause, he then asked, "May I ask your surnames?" Luo Ren cupped his fists and cupped his hands, saying, "I don't dare. My name is Luo Mingren." Lin Yap also cupped her fists and said, "My name is Lin Yap." Lin Yap. After the young Taoist Zhang Xian heard Lin Yap announce her name, he showed a surprised expression, narrowed his eyes slightly, and stared at Lin Yap carefully again. Both Luo Ren and Lin Yap were confused. Lin Yap asked, "What's wrong with you, Taoist master?" "Why are you staring at me?" It does look like." Zhang Xian's eyes flashed and he asked, "Girl, did you just say your name was Lin Yap?" Lin Yap said, "Yes, what's wrong?" Hearing this, Zhang Xian immediately smiled and said, "Miss Lin Yap, is your father called Lin Wen? Is your mother called Chen Jinhe?" "Ah, Lin." Yap couldn't help but exclaimed, grabbed Zhang Xian's hand, and asked anxiously, "How do you know? Do you know my parents?" Zhang Xian pulled out his palm and smiled faintly. "It seems to be fate. Your parents are now in the Taoist temple, and they talk about you every day." "Really? I thought I would never see my parents again, but I didn't expect that they were actually in Xianwu Dao sect." Lin Yap burst into tears of joy. She grabbed Zhang Ziyan's arm again and said anxiously, "Master He, please take me to see my parents." Zhang Ziyan struggled to pull out her arm. Such a small girl was so strong. After pulling out her arm, she breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Of course, please follow me." After that, she walked in, and Luo Ren and Lin Ya followed immediately. Walking on the road, Luo Ren looked around. From time to time, Taoists and ordinary humans passed by, and most of them were carrying farm tools and tools to work. Seeing this, Luo Ren frowned slightly and said, "Master Ziyan, I don't understand one thing. Since the outbreak of the virus, zombies have been everywhere. Moreover, before we went up the mountain, we encountered 2 golden monkeys blocking the way halfway up the mountain. They gestured that there were extremely terrifying creatures on the mountain. But it's peaceful here. Even outside the Taoist sect, there are only ordinary zombies with weak combat power wandering around. It doesn't look like there are any terrifying creatures. Could it be that the 2 golden monkeys deliberately deceived us?" Zhang Ziyan suddenly stopped, turned to look at Luo Ren, and said seriously, "The 2 monkeys didn't lie to you. There are indeed very powerful and terrifying creatures." Chapter 263 Taoist Kingsun, Part 1. Luo Ren frowned and asked, "What kind of creature is it?" Zhang Ziyan was silent for a long time, then turned around, and continued to walk forward. As he walked, he said, "That creature is neither human nor monkey, but it is like a human and a monkey. It is extremely fast and powerful. It is also good at stick skills. It is extremely powerful. Based on its characteristics, we call this creature a man-ape, neither human nor monkey, but still like humans and monkeys." Luo Ren repeated this sentence in his mind, and couldn't help but think of heterogeneous evolved zombies. The tyrannical creature ape mentioned by Zhang Ziyan is most likely the fusion of zombie genes and monkey genes. The birth of a heterogeneous evolved zombie point at the same time. He was a little confused. Since the ape was so powerful, how did the people of the Cheyenne Wu Dao sect survive? Donor. Luo must be wondering at this time, why can the people of my Cheyenne Wu Dao sect survive if the apes are so powerful? Before Luo Ren could answer, Zhang Ziyan said what he was thinking. He scratched his head and complained, "Just shut up and listen when you chat with this guy." This was the case in his heart, but it was not the case on the surface. He said, "That's right. Please ask Taoist Master Ziyan to clear up my doubts." Zhang Ziyan turned around and smiled and said, "It's very simple, because there is also a person in our Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect who can match the enemy ape." He retracted his gaze, continued to move forward, and added, "Coincidentally, that person is the master of Pindao, the 26th generation successor of Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect, the current leader, Kingsuan Taoist, Zhang Wutang." Hearing this, Lin Ya exclaimed, "It's actually Kingsuan Zenren. Taoist Kingsuan." Luo Ren muttered secretly in his heart. Point at this time, Lin Ya leaned close to his ear and explained, "Before the end of the world, there were folk rumors that Master Kingsuan once killed a leopard with one punch. Some people who practice modern fighting didn't believe it. They went to Cheyenne Wu Mountain to challenge him, but in the end they didn't see Kingsuan. After comparing with his disciples, they went up the mountain standing, and down the mountain lying down. Moreover, Master Kingsuan has superb medical skills, and never thinks of himself as aloof. Instead, he is approachable, and can help anyone who seeks medical advice. Therefore, the reputation of Master Kingsuan is very good in our Luo County, and everyone in Luo County respects Master Kingsuan very much." Zhang Ziyan listened attentively, and was very impressed by Lin Ya's praise of his master. He couldn't help but have a faint smile on his face, and then said, "Master is a monk, and doesn't like to kill. However, the leopard caused harm to the village, biting and killing many livestock, and injuring the villagers. Therefore, Master killed him, in order to solve the problem for the villagers." Lin Ya was not shocked when she said it. After all, there was a folk rumor in the front and the credibility was not high. But now that it is said from Zhang Ziyan, a person who is close to Kingsuan, the credibility is extremely high. This matter 9 times out of 10 its true point. Although leopards are not as good as super hunters such as tigers and lions, they are still considered top hunters among carnivores. Ordinary people can kill a leopard with their bare hands, but it is absolutely impossible to kill it with one punch. This shows that King Sun Zenran is very powerful. At this time, Luo Ren couldn't help but touch his trouser pocket, where there was a booklet, thinking, is martial arts practice a real thing, not a lie? But why does the system say that cultivation is a lie? Remind the host that there is no cultivation in this world. Only life energy can evolve living bodies. The system heard what Luo Ren was thinking and immediately issued a reminder. Luo Ren frowned slightly. The system was so sure that there was no cultivation in this world, but the living examples of Wu Yangxiang and King Sun in front of him really made him confused. Unknowingly, he followed Zhang Ziyan to the door of the main hall, looked inside the main hall, and saw an old Taoist sitting cross-legged on a futon under the statue of San King. Zhang Ziyan turned to look at Lin Yan and said, Miss Lin Yan needs to meet Master Pindao before seeing your parents again. This is the rule. I hope you can forgive me. Lin Yan learned that her parents were alive, and although she desperately wanted to see them immediately, she couldn't break the rules, and it was only for a while, so she wouldn't be delayed for long. She nodded and smiled. It's okay. Zhang Ziyan smiled, then looked at Luo Ren, nodded slightly, then turned his eyes to look at the figure in the hall with a respectful expression, bowed and said, Master, 2 donors came down the mountain. They said they were here to seek shelter. The disciple saw that they were not bad people, so he brought them over. The hall was very large and empty. Zhang Ziyan's voice came in, and there was a faint echo. Under the gaze of the 3 people, the old Taoist moved, then stood up, turned around slowly, and looked this way. The old Taoist has white hair and a childish face, with bright eyes. Although his body is thin, it can be seen from his upright posture that his thin body contains powerful power. As the saying goes, people cannot be judged by appearance, and sea water cannot be measured. This is what an experienced Taoist should be. Zhang Ziyan saw the old Taoist's face, and immediately said respectfully, Master, Lin Yan was born and raised in Luo County, so she naturally recognized Taoist King Sun, and immediately said respectfully, I have seen the real person. Luo Ren glanced at each of them, and out of respect for the elders, he cupped his fists and said, I have seen a real person. Master King Sun stroked his beard and smiled, strode forward, and said with a smile, I have seen these 2 before. When she saw Lin Yan, she took a breath, and said in surprise, why does this female donor look familiar? Zhang Ziyan heard this and explained, Master, the parents of this girl Lin Yan, believers Lin Wen and believers Chen Jinhua, are also taking refuge in Ashian Wu Taoist sect at this time. Oh. Taoist King Sun suddenly realized, nodded, and said, I remember now. He looked at Zhang Ziyan and said, in that case, why don't you take Lin to reunite with her parents? Yes, Master. Zhang Ziyan bowed slightly and responded respectfully. Then he nodded slightly to Lin Yan and said, Miss Lin Yan, please follow me. Lin Yan looked at Luo Ren for advice. Luo Ren smiled and said, go. Lin Yan was delighted, nodded, and said to Zhang Ziyan, Master please lead the way. After Zhang Ziyan and Lin Yan left, Taoist King Sun's attention was all on Luo Ren. Unlike Lin Yan, the old Taoist looked at Luo Ren carefully, frowned slightly, and said, may I ask your name, donor? Luo Ren noticed the subtle changes in Taoist King Sun's expression, and didn't know why, but still replied, my surname is Luo and my name is Ren. Ren means righteousness. Taoist King Sun bowed slightly, stroked his beard and said, the surname Luo is actually from Luo County, so it is a fate with this place. Ren means righteousness, but the old Taoist was silent for a long time, and continued, I was born with keen 5 senses, and I have some attainments in the ancient medical skills of Xia country. The ancient medical skills of our Xia country emphasize observation, smell, questioning, and palpation. He carefully examined Luo Ren again, slightly, and said seriously, Mr. Luo, you are sick, and it is a serious illness. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Taoist King Sun, Part 2. Luo Ren was suddenly shocked. He was sick. He was a level 3 evolver with extremely high physical fitness. How could he be sick? This old man couldn't be a quack. That was what he thought, but Taoist King Xuan's next sentence shocked him. He only heard Taoist King Xuan ask, "May I ask if the donor has been hurt by the devil? Demon? Are you talking about zombies? Did the old Taoist priest see that I'm infected with the zombie virus?" Luo Ren was shocked and then pretended to be dumbfounded and said, "Demon? I don't know. What is it?" Demons are human beings in the outside world who have lost their souls and minds. You young people like to call them zombies. Taoist King Xuan explained patiently. Seeing Luo Ren's silence, Taoist King Xuan chuckled and said, "The donor doesn't want to say anything, but the Taoist won't force anything." Luo Ren remained silent and continued, "In the past, I wanted to save people who were injured by demons. Unfortunately, after they were infected with the demon's breath, they would turn into demons in a very short period of time. There was simply not enough time. Rescue point, but the benefactor was different. The benefactor was full of ki and blood and had strong essence. It seemed that he had been injured by the demon for several days. Under such circumstances, there was no sign of transforming into a demon. It was expected that he could still persist for a long time." Finally, Luo Ren spoke up and said, "If you have anything to say, tell me directly." Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard and said with a smile, "The donor is impatient, so the Taoist said so directly." After a pause, he said, "I'm willing to implement treatment measures for the donor, but the success is unknown. This is using me as a living experiment, as a guinea pig." Luo Ren complained in his heart, but he was not angry. He could see that the veteran's move was purely out of good intentions, but there were no successful cases, so whether it was successful or not, naturally, it is unknown. In fact, success or failure is not unknown here to Luo Ren, but 100% denial. Living in Xianwu Mountain, there are no high-tech instruments. This is not the legendary world of Taoism and immortality. Want to eliminate him? The zombie genes in the body are currently only the pure life energy in the dragon pattern crystal. Therefore, even if the old Taoist found him Millennium Ginseng and Millennium Ganoderma Lucidum, their greatest function would be to replenish ki and blood point. Now that it has been seen, Luo Ren does not intend to pretend to be stupid anymore, and said, "I appreciate the kindness of the real person. To be honest, I already have a method of treatment. I came to Xianwu Mountain not to seek refuge, but to find key things for treatment." The little baby in his 20s actually knew how to cure the demon's wounds, which surprised the old Taoist King Xuan. He hurriedly asked, "Can you tell me about the little donor's healing method?" Luo Ren thought for a long time and then said, "Of course it is possible. All famous mountains and rivers will breed a kind of ore. This ore contains mysterious energy. This mysterious energy can purify the zombie virus. There is such a magical ore." Taoist King Xuan was amazed and then said, "Since the donor has his own way to save it, the old Taoist will not care. It is up to the donor to find the ore. If you have any questions about Xianwu Mountain, you can ask my apprentice Zhang Xian." Luo Ren said gratefully, "Thank you, Master King Xuan." Taoist King Xuan nodded, greeted the Taoist boy next to him, and said, "Zhen, take this donor Luo to the backyard and find a room to stay in." The Taoist boy said respectfully, "Yes." Taoist King Xuan turned back to the statue of San King and continued to sit cross-legged. The Taoist boy walked up to Luo Ren and introduced himself. "Hello, Donor Luo, Chen Zhen, the 29th generation successor of Xiaodao Xianwu Taoist sect." The little Taoist priest in front of him still had a childish look on his face. He was still young and looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. Luo Ren smiled and said, "Hello. Please come with me," said the young Taoist priest Chen Zhen. "Please." Luo Ren nodded slightly. Following the little Taoist priest to the backyard, there were suddenly more pedestrians in front of me, including men and women, and most of them were not Taoist priests. Young Taoist priest Chen Zhen explained, "Most of these donors are tourists traveling to Xianwu Mountain and Taoist believers from the county, and there are also a few staff of the tourism bureau. Due to unexpected changes, they stayed in our Xianwu Taoist sect to seek refuge. There are currently 103 Taoist priests in our Xianwu Taoist sect, and the rest are 367. The number of people is not large compared with peacetime, so the guest rooms are sufficient. Without the food support from the mountain, how can so many people survive? Luo Ren asked curiously after hearing this. He saw that, although these people were thin and some had malnourished white spots on their faces, they were generally in good spirits, and were far from skinny. Young Taoist priest Chen Zihuan said, "Our Xianwu Taoist sect has dozens of acres of fertile land in Xianwu Mountain. Although it is not within the Taoist temple, there are many dangers outside. However, we don't need to guard the land all the time. After planting, we will go back to the Taoist temple and remove insects, weeds, fertilize, etc. after a period of time. We are protected by the elders of the sect on the way. After such a long time, it is considered a smooth life." In addition, every year in previous years, the temple would stock up on food several times as much as the disciples could eat. These donors would also spontaneously go out to collect some wild vegetables near the temple. Therefore, in terms of food, they could survive, even if they saved a little. After hearing this, Luo Ren praised, "Compared to the foot of the mountain, the Xianwu Dao sect here can be regarded as a paradise and a quiet place." The young Taoist priest Chen Zihuan asked curiously, "I always heard from the elders in the sect that the world under the mountain is extremely terrifying and is already a hell on earth. Lord Luo, you came down from the mountain. Is this true? The world under the mountain has really become a purgatory on earth already?" Luo Ren sighed and said, "In the world below the mountain, bones are piled up into mountains. Zombies eat people, and people eat people. Ordinary people without power and influence can lose their dignity and lives at any time. It is more terrifying than hell." Then, he clenched his fists and said, "These demons will definitely be wiped out, and the world will return to peace. Too scary." The young Taoist priest Chen Zihuan was horrified and immediately echoed, "I also firmly believe that the demons will be wiped out, and the world will return to peace." He suddenly stopped and looked back at Luo Ren, looking forward to it. Jing said, "Master said that, when I turn 18, he will take me down the mountain to travel and visit the beautiful mountains and rivers of Xia country. I'm 16 now, and I hope that when I turn 18, the world can return to its former appearance." Luo Ren patted his shoulder and said, "It will definitely happen." The young Taoist priest Chen Zihuan grinned, then turned back, slightly startled, and then pointed to the building in front and said, "We are here." Luo Ren looked at it and saw that it was a house that was obviously built later. Judging from its many windows, it should be the former employee dormitory building. At this moment, Lin Ya and a middle-aged man and a woman, two middle-aged people, walked out of the dormitory building and immediately saw Luo Ren. Lin Ya immediately greeted him, "Brother Luo." Chapter 265 Dragon Pattern Crystal. Luo Ren smiled and waved to Lin Ya. Read the middle-aged man and woman beside Lin Ya looked at Luo Ren, examined him carefully, and nodded to each other. Lin Ya pulled the middle-aged man and woman forward and said, "Mom and Dad, let me introduce you. This is Brother Luo Ren. Thanks to him, I was able to reach Xianwu Mountain and meet you all along the way." Then, he said, "Brother Luo, these are my parents." Luo Ren fully expressed his courtesy as a good citizen and shouted, "Hello, uncle and aunt." Lin Ya's parents nodded again and said in unison, "Hello, hello." Lin Ya's mother Chen Jinhua continued, "Your name is Luo Ren, a good name." She came forward and whispered, "How long have you been with Xiaoya?" Luo Ren frowned slightly, looking at Lin Ya with a strange expression. Lin Ya's cheeks flushed, and she quickly pulled her mother and said, "Oh, Mom, Brother Luo and I are not that kind of relationship." Chen Jinhua looked at Lin Ya and asked blankly, "Didn't you say you found a boyfriend?" Lin Ya's face became even redder, and she said anxiously, "Yes, but I didn't say it was Brother Luo." Chen Jinhua suddenly realized and apologized quickly, "Sorry, Xiao Luo, Lin Ya's father, and I had a quarrel." Luo Ren smiled and said, "It's okay, auntie." Chen Jinhua retreated to Lin Ya's father Lin Wen and fell into silence, causing the atmosphere to be a little awkward. After a long silence, Lin Ya finally spoke to break the awkwardness. She said, "Brother Lin, what are you doing here?" As soon as these words came out, the awkward atmosphere was immediately broken. Luo Ren felt relieved and hurriedly replied, Master Chen, bring me here to find temporary housing. Chen Zihuan smiled on the side and said, it is indeed the master who ordered me to arrange a resting room for the donor Luo Ren. Is that so? Brother Luo, you guys go find housing first. I will take a walk with my parents for a while. Lin Ya said. Luo Ren nodded and then entered the dormitory building with Chen Zihuan. After the two left, Lin Ya's mother Chen Jinhua shook her head and looked at Lin Ya with a look of disappointment, saying, Xiao Ya, if you don't catch such a good man, what kind of boyfriend do you find? Lin Ya scratched her head and said, Mom, you will know when you see it yourself later. You didn't deliberately lie to me and your father, saying that you found a boyfriend, but you don't. Chen Jinhua activated the passive skill of middle-aged woman and nagging. Xiao Ya, you are not young anymore. You are 24 this year. If you don't find a boyfriend and get married, you will be married in a few days. He is almost 30 years old. Besides, in this situation, how many people will die? It is hard to find a good one. It is said that a woman 3 years older than her husband will bring wealth. In fact, that is self-consolation. You see, which man doesn't like younger women? If not for others, just look at your father. Don't think I don't know that this old man often stares at those young women who are dressed very coolly on the street. I'm talking about you. How come you are talking about me? Besides, how can I stare at young women who are dressed very coolly when it comes to himself? Lin Wen immediately quit and refuted immediately. Hey, old man, you still don't admit it, right? At that time, you accompanied me to buy vegetables, and you stared at the girl who was also buying vegetables. You stared at her, and hurriedly paid the bill and ran away. Chen Jinhua put one hand on her waist, and pointed at Lin Wen's nose with the other hand, and listed the facts, that he peeked at young girls with reason and evidence. Lin Wen turned his back, and Chen Jinhua immediately walked around in front of him. Lin Ya shook her head helplessly. The old couple had been quarreling for a lifetime and still hadn't stopped. The clouds covered the moon, and the world temporarily fell into darkness. It was late at night, and almost everyone had fallen asleep, but Luo Ren hadn't. He suddenly jumped up from the single bed, moved to the window, pulled open the curtains, and looked at the darkness outside the window. The night in Xianwu Mountain was not quiet. In addition to the sounds of insects, there were also the sounds of creatures running through the jungle, trampling on dead branches and leaves, and occasional monkeys' calls. Although it was not quiet, people slept soundly, as if the Xianwu Dao sect had a magic that could make people feel at ease. Taking a deep breath, Luo Ren raised his hand and looked at the detector on his wrist. The Xianwu Dao sect is located on the top of Xianwu Mountain, which is located in the center of Xianwu Mountain. Turning on the detection here will make it easier to detect the dragon pattern crystal. Pressing two buttons with two fingers, a circle of energy radiated. Looking forward to it, nervously waiting for the detector to respond. Buzz buzz buzz, the detector suddenly vibrated continuously, and then an electronic sound was heard. Dragon crystal found. Dragon crystal found. Dragon crystal found. 3 consecutive prompts fell into Luo Ren's ears, causing his breathing to freeze. After a moment, his breathing became rapid again, and the whole person could not stop shaking. It was not illness, nor was the zombie virus about to break out, but excitement and excitement. At this moment, his excitement and excitement were indescribable in words. If I had to describe it, it would be 10,000 times more exciting than winning the lottery 100 times. No, 100 million times. After a long time, he calmed down, because if he didn't calm down, the detector would run out of power. He quickly looked at the detector screen, which showed an arrow. Looking in the direction of the arrow, it was the wall. Jumping down from the window, after landing, he looked in the direction of the arrow, which was only an approximate direction, and the detailed location was not marked. Fleeting in the direction indicated by the detector, he soon saw the top. Looking up, although the clouds covered the moon and the sky and earth were dark, the magical thing was that there was a faint golden light. Even if he couldn't see the whole picture, he could guess that it was the golden summit of Xianwu Mountain. The golden summit is a hall with a gilded roof. The famous mountains and rivers, where the Taoist and Buddhist sects are located, usually build a hall with a gilded roof on the main peak of the mountain, which is also the highest point of the entire famous mountain and river. It is called the Golden Summit. When he arrived here, the detector vibrated again, and the prompt sounded again. The dragon pattern crystal is detected less than 100 meters apart. The dragon pattern crystal is detected less than 100 meters apart. The dragon pattern crystal is detected less than 100 meters apart. After 3 consecutive prompts, Luo Ren stopped and looked around, and finally looked at the golden summit of the main peak. If the dragon pattern crystal is less than 100 meters apart, then the most likely place is the golden summit, or the main peak, because it is the center of Xianwu mountain point at this moment. A figure flew down from the golden roof and headed straight for him point. Because the clouds blocked the moonlight, it was pitch black, and only the outline of the figure could be vaguely seen. But it was unclear who it was. The figure was extremely fast, and it arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye, and then slapped out with one palm point before the palm arrived. The palm wind whistled, and the airflow blew on his face like a knife. Luo Ren was shocked and hurried punch to meet the attack. Bang! The fists and palms collided, and the visible energy from the two of them rolled up the dust on the ground and spread out. The opponent's power was like a tide, very powerful, and Luo Ren retreated several steps. However, the opponent did not take advantage, and also retreated several steps. Luo Ren was horrified. This person's speed and strength were not weaker than his own. Could it be that extremely terrifying creature? Before he could think carefully, the opponent attacked again, and he had to meet it. The opponent was obviously proficient in kung fu and martial arts, and every attack was in a method. He threw a powerful punch and hit the target. Just as he was gloating over himself, his fist seemed to fall on cotton and hit the water surface, and the force was removed. After the opponent removed his force, he quickly counterattacked, using grappling means to hold his right hand and right shoulder, then went around behind him, and kicked behind his knee joint with his toes. His legs immediately weakened, and he knelt on one knee. The opponent was not weak, and being captured, Luo Ren could not escape by brute force. He was extremely anxious. Only then did he detect the dragon pattern crystal, and see the dawn of life. Was he going to die here today? He was unwilling, very unwilling, and wanted to use all his strength to break free from control. At this time, the clouds dispersed, and the light came, and the world regained a trace of clarity, and then he heard a familiar voice. Master Luo has such strength at such a young age. He is really a young talent. After the words fell, the two hands holding his shoulders and wrists loosened up. He hurriedly turned around, and saw the person in front of him in the moonlight. It was the head of the Xianwu Dao sect, Taoist King Xuan. He clasped his fists and bowed, saying respectfully, "Meet the real person." The fact that Taoist King Xuan subdued him in just a few moves was enough to show how powerful he was. Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard and laughed. Master Luo has great strength, but his martial arts moves are a little lacking. What? Martial arts moves? Luo Ren didn't know kung fu at all. He just relied on his extremely fast speed and strength to crush his opponents. Even if he encountered level 3 zombies and level 3 evolved animals, he still relied on instinct to fight them. In fact, these beasts were not much different from him. They all relied on instinct, speed, and strength. Taoist King Xuan said it so euphemistically, intending to take care of his face. I have never practiced martial arts or fighting techniques, and I have little exercise. I can have such strength and speed completely relying on the evolution crystal. Luo Ren did not have any psychological burden, and told the truth directly. King Xuan Taoist did not expect Luo Ren to be so honest. He was slightly stunned, and then smiled and said, "It's okay, it's okay. With such strength, practicing martial arts will be twice as effective with half the effort. Even if you don't practice martial arts, relying on instinctive reactions, there are few people in the world who can beat you." Luo Ren said, "Thank you for the compliment, real person." King Xuan Taoist continued, "Is the evolution crystal you just mentioned the jade-like thing in the demon's brain?" "Yes, it is this thing." Luo Ren replied. King Xuan Taoist was surprised. This little thing can actually increase people's strength. It's really magical. King Xuan Taoist was surprised, and Luo Ren was even more surprised after hearing his words. He didn't know the function of the evolution crystal. In this way, he did not take the evolution crystal. Yes, when I came here, I heard Zhang Xian and Lin Ya say that before the virus broke out, King Zhu and Zenran had killed a leopard with a single punch. But why is he so powerful without taking the evolution crystal? Could it be? Luo Ren's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was extremely shocked. He thought to himself, is there really a way to practice? Chapter 266 Under the Statue, Part 1. Seeing Luo Ren's surprised expression in Taoist King Xuan's eyes, he couldn't help but ask, is there anything difficult about the donor's reaction? Luo Ren took a deep breath, looked directly at Taoist King Xuan, and asked with an extremely serious expression, dare I ask, if there is a way to practice? Taoist King Xuan's expression remained as usual, and his eyes were clear. After hearing Luo Ren's question, he replied calmly, of course there is a way to practice. Read the so-called cultivation is to cultivate the mind, and practice Yuan Qi. Even those who have achieved great success in cultivation, are not afraid of the living, the dead, or the evil. If the sky falls, their expressions will not change. Faced with the temptation of a golden mountain, you can treat yourself like dirt and still keep your original intention. This is cultivation. The method of cultivation can be learned by oneself, acquired by chance, or passed down by the ancients. The first to require great understanding and great opportunity, and people like this must be the best among men. As for the ancient inheritance, it is an entry-level method that ordinary people can practice. Luo Ren was immediately excited when he heard that there was a method of cultivation. However, what Taoist King Xuan said later was that he talked about the nature of the mind and not the method of cultivating immortals. This made him excited, but also filled with doubts. The so-called cultivation means that, as long as the cultivation of one's mind is completed, one can become an immortal and attain the Tao. Then he thought of the Yuan Qi in the words. The word sounded a bit like a fairy tale and fantasy. Maybe this was the legendary key to becoming an immortal, and becoming immortal. He immediately asked, how does Yuan Qi practice? What will happen to his body after practicing? I wonder if a real person has Yuan Qi's method of practice? Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard and said with a smile, it seems that the donor has misunderstood. The Taoist has also heard and read secular novels, and the talk about cultivating to become an immortal is just a fabrication. Throughout the thousands of years of history of the Xia kingdom, not all of the people who became immortals and Taoists in ancient times were rumored. After all, over thousands of years, lies can turn into truth, and conjecture can turn into myth. If it is true that someone can become an immortal through cultivation, then why has no one become an immortal in modern times? Is it really because, in the modern Xia kingdom, the country does not allow animals to become spirits and humans to become immortals? The so-called Yuan Qi is just a Taoist theory. You can understand it as a kind of energy that supports the operation of the human body. The reason why human beings are born, old, sick and die is due to the gain and loss of this energy. We, as Taoists, practice Yuan Qi just to slow down the loss of Yuan Qi, so that we can live longer. Taoist King Xuan explained it very clearly, and Luo Ren understood it. Generally speaking, the so-called cultivation methods do exist, but they are not the ones in legends, or made up by people. After you succeed in cultivation, you will have great changes in every move you make. Most people will believe such a well-founded explanation, but Luo Ren is still skeptical, not for any other reason, just because Taoist King Xuan has such a powerful power without eating evolution crystals. This is obviously contradictory to the cultivation method he said of. Taoist King Xuan is worthy of being a master level figure. Seeing what Luo Ren was thinking, he immediately replied, I know that the donor has deep doubts about what the Taoist said, and the source of this doubt is why I have such strength and speed. Smiling, Taoist King Xuan pointed to the golden summit of the main peak and said, this matter has a lot to do with the golden summit of that mountain peak. He put his hands behind his back, looked at the golden summit of the main peak, and continued, I have been practicing in the Xian Wu Taoist sect since I was a child. I remember that, when I was 10 years old, I climbed the main peak to avoid practicing in the morning, and fell asleep under the golden summit without knowing it. After taking it, I wake up feeling refreshed and extremely comfortable. At this point, whenever I'm tired, I will climb up to the main peak and sit under the eaves of the Golden Dome to rest. No matter whether I'm mentally exhausted or physically tired, I will feel refreshed, and my body will be sore after sitting under the eaves of the Golden Dome for an hour. All disappeared. After many times, I thought about practicing the guidance technique under the Golden Dome to stabilize Yuan Qi. At this time, I found that the Yuan Qi in my body was not only stable, but even growing. My strength and speed also improved rapidly. The age of 15, when he was young, he could kill a leopard with one punch. After he was 20, he could catch a tiger with his bare hands. As he said that, he suddenly turned to look at Luo Ren and asked with a smile, "Little donor, do you know how old I'm this year?" Luo Ren carefully observed the old man in front of him. Although his hair and beard were grey, there were no wrinkles on his face, and his skin was as delicate as that of an old man in his 20s and 30s. He pondered for a moment and replied, "More than 50 years old? This is still too much to say, but in fact, in his heart, he thinks that the veteran is only in his 40s. Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard, shook his head, and said, "I'm 66 years old this year." Luo Ren was horrified. He was 86 years old. This was definitely not the case. Taoist King Xuan laughed and said, "I may look like the legendary Taoist cultivator, but I know that, as long as I leave the Golden Summit, the energy in my body will quietly pass away. Although the speed is slow, it is passing away after all. One day it will be exhausted, and then it will fly back to the west point. From this, we can conclude that the reason why I'm able to do this is not due to cultivation, but because of the main peak, the Golden Summit." Luo Ren couldn't help but look at Jingding. After listening to the old Taoist's words and combining all the knowledge in his mind, he quickly came up with a conjecture that Taoist King Xuan should be a human with the same special physique as Liu Liangxin. The reason why resting under the Golden Dome can quickly restore physical strength and practice can strengthen Yuan Qi is because it absorbs the life energy bred in the dragon pattern crystals on the main peak. From this point of view, the so-called Yuan Qi is life energy. Strengthening life energy allows the evolution of life levels, which can achieve the effect of prolonging life. According to the judgment, Taoist King Xuan should be a level 3 evolver, and he is still a boy with fair hair at the age of 86. In this way, Luo Ren may also be a boy with fair hair when he is over 80 years old. This made him want to see himself in his 80s. He would still be handsome and elegant, even more mature and manly. He shook his head and shook off these thoughts. In the current situation, the dragon crystal was the top priority, and these trivial matters were not important. He clasped his fists towards Taoist King Xuan and said, "Master, can I go to the Golden Summit to feel it?" Taoist King Xuan smiled and said, "Of course, please." The two walked shoulder to shoulder along the bluestone steps to the main peak, and came to the eaves of the Golden Summit. At this time, the detector on Luo Ren's wrist vibrated again, and the frequency increased. At the same time, the telecommunication was transmitted through the skin. The dragon crystal is less than 10 meters away. The dragon crystal is less than 10 meters away. The dragon crystal is less than 10 meters away. He suddenly raised his wrist and looked at the screen of the detector. The arrow on it pointed to the Golden Summit. Luo Ren's breathing stagnated, and his heartbeat was violent. Could it be that the dragon crystal was in the Golden Summit? What's wrong with the young donor? Taoist King Xuan noticed that Luo Ren's aura suddenly became agitated, and he also saw him raise his hand to look at his watch. He also saw that the watch on his wrist was not a clock, but an arrow, and the direction the arrow pointed to was the Golden Summit. Luo Ren did not intend to hide it, and said to Taoist King Xuan sincerely, "To be honest, I have detected a mineral that can treat the zombie virus, and it is in the Golden Summit." Chapter 267 Under the Statue, Part 2. When Taoist King Xuan heard the words, he understood the meaning without any explanation. He smiled calmly and said, "Since it is in the Golden Dome, let's go in and look for it." After saying that, he walked towards the door of the Golden Dome hall. Luo Ren was extremely surprised by this move. Why was it different from the martial arts novels and fairy novels? The so-called Golden Summit, according to the name, shouldn't be the kind of place where no one is allowed to enter. Why let him in so easily now? Taoist Kingston, who was walking to the door, saw Luo Ren froze on the spot, stroked his beard, and said with a smile, "Don't you think that only the headmaster and elders can enter the Golden Summit?" Luo Ren nodded and said, "That's my impression." Taoist Kingston laughed, shook his head, and said, "No, the Golden Dome is an important place, but it is not an important place. There is a statue of Emperor Xuanwu in the Golden Dome, and there is an ever-burning lamp. The idea is to worship Emperor Xuanwu. If people are not allowed to enter, wouldn't it mean that they are cutting off their faith and the path to incense? Besides." Taoist Kingston took a few steps back, pointed to the top of the golden roof, and said, "Did you see that metal pipe, the lightning rod installed by the Tourism Bureau? With just this step, the wonder of the Thunderfire refining palace ceased to exist. Modern civilization requires belief, but it cannot be followed blindly. Some unreasonable beliefs must be discarded." He looked up at the sky, looking at the stars all over the sky, and said, "This sky is not the 33rd level, nor is there chaos outside the sky. Through modern technology, we understand that the earth we step on is a planet called the Earth. Deep in the earth, there are no 18 levels of hell, but a metal core. To put it bluntly, it is a big iron ball. The sky is the atmosphere of the earth, and beyond the sky is the universe. There are countless planets in space. What is a god, and what is an immortal? These are just the existences imagined by human beings in the long river, or maybe they just want their ancestors to his name, will be passed down, and will remain immortal in people's hearts. Therefore, if there is something that can save the benefactor's life in the Golden Dome, it doesn't matter if it goes in, or it doesn't matter if it digs 3 feet into the ground. In the worst case, it can be backfilled and leveled, isn't it?" Luo Ren was really shocked by Taoist Kingston. He was a real master and definitely worthy of the title of real person. He cupped his fists, and cupped his hands, bowed 90 degrees, and said sincerely, "Thank you, Master." Master Kingston stroked his beard and smiled, then stepped into the Golden Dome hall. Seeing this, Luo Ren followed him into the hall. In the main hall, there is a statue of Emperor Xuanwu sitting upright. There are ever-burning lamps on the left and right sides of the statue, and in the center of the altar table in front of it. They are actually oil lamps. Their brightness is far inferior to that of light bulbs, and even candles are not as bright. Therefore, the light in the Golden Domed Hall at this time was dim. However, both of them were level 3 evolvers with sharp facial features and much better eyesight than ordinary people. They could see surrounding affairs clearly with only the dim light of the oil lamp. Luo Ren walked to the statue of Emperor Xuanwu according to the instructions of the detector. At this moment, the prompt sounded again. The dragon pattern crystal is detected 1 meter directly in front. 1 meter directly ahead. Luo Ren repeated this sentence, and at the same time, looked up directly ahead where the arrow pointed, and saw the statue of Emperor Xuanwu. He was a little surprised, and thought to himself, is the dragon pattern crystal in the statue of Emperor Xuanwu? Although Taoist Kingston said he could dig 3 feet into the ground, he never said he could break the statue of Emperor Xuanwu. Breaking the statue would be much more serious than digging 3 feet into the ground. He couldn't help but look at Taoist Kingston, and hesitated for a long time, not knowing how to speak. Taoist Kingston's attention has always been on Luo Ren. He also saw the performance just now. Having lived for more than 80 years, he has extremely deep wisdom, and wisdom can guess what Luo Ren is thinking. He smiled and said, "If you have any questions, just tell me." Luo Ren clenched his fist with one hand, and then loosened it immediately. What should be said must be said, and what should be done must be done. He said, "Master, the detector on my hand indicates that the dragon pattern crystal may be in the statue." After hearing this, Taoist Kingston didn't have much reaction. He smiled softly and said, "Since it is in the statue, then take it. However, can the little donor be sure that he is in the statue of the god, and not under the statue of the god?" "Under the statue." Luo Ren frowned. "It may not necessarily be in the statue, but it may also be under the statue." After thinking for a moment, he had an idea in his mind and asked, "I want to move the statue away. Verify whether the or is under the statue of the god, or in the statue of the god. I don't know the real person." Master Kingston didn't even think about it. He nodded and said, the little donor can do whatever he wants. Thank you, Master. Luo Ren was excited, thanked him, and immediately started taking action. He first moved the altar table away, walked around and looked at the statue carefully, and hugged it with both hands. The statue was made of purple gold and copper and was more than 3 meters high. After testing, it should weigh about 10 tons. When converted into kilograms, it is 1 pound. More than 10,000 kilograms are heavier than Sun Wukong's golden cudgel. He took a deep breath, then held it, exerting all his strength, making the veins on his arms and forehead stand out. Get up. Luo Ren shouted in a deep voice. Then, the statue weighing more than 10 tons slowly rose up from the ground. With such huge power, it was worthy of being a level 3 evolver. Pick up the statue, slowly move it to the side, and then move it gently. Clank all. After putting down the statue, Luo Ren breathed a sigh of relief and asked curiously, it's so heavy, how did it get to the mountain? What a strength. Taoist King Xuan praised. A single person can move a statue weighing more than 10,000 kilograms. This kind of strength is worthy of the title of God. Thank you for the compliment, Master, Luo Ren said. He immediately looked at the detector screen and saw that the direction pointed by the arrow above did not change. In this way, the dragon pattern crystal was not in the statue of the god, but under the statue of the god. Flashing to the original position of the statue, the arrow on the detector screen immediately turned into a dot. He looked at Taoist King Xuan and said in surprise, Master, the ore I'm looking for is right below. Taoist King Xuan felt Luo Ren's joy and was equally happy. He stroked his beard and said, in that case, what are you waiting for? Dig out the ore quickly, so that I can see how to purify the devil's breath. Okay. Luo Ren responded, then looked around, shrugged, and said, Master, don't we have tools like hoes here? Taoist King Xuan laughed and said, this is the Ginding Hall, a place for worship. How can farm tools be stored there? Then he stroked his beard and said, come with me, I'll take you to find a handy hoe. After speaking, Taoist King Xuan stepped out of the hall. Luo Ren scratched his head and followed him out of the hall. After the two of them left the hall, they took 2 steps, and Taoist King Xuan suddenly stopped. The relaxed expression on his face suddenly disappeared, replaced by a solemn look, and vigilance emerged in his bright eyes. Taoist King Xuan glanced at Luo Ren and said, little donor, have you noticed anything unusual? Luo Ren was also alert. Hearing this, he nodded and said, something is coming towards us. Taoist King Xuan said, it's an ape. Ape. Luo Ren was shocked. When he first went up the mountain, Zhang Ziyan told him that there was an extremely ferocious creature on the top of the mountain, called ape. It seems that a fierce battle is inevitable tonight. Chapter 268 Ape. Seeing Luo Ren in a fighting stance, his eyes gradually filled with vigilance, ready for battle. Taoist King Xuan relaxed at this time and said calmly, the ape came just in time. Luo Ren was puzzled, so he asked, the apes are powerful, so there must be a big war. Why is it just right? Taoist King Xuan laughed and asked, does the little donor know the strength of that ape? Luo Ren pondered for a moment and replied, I heard Taoist Master Ziyan say that the reason why the orangutan did not dare to invade the Xian Wu Taoist sect was entirely because you were in the Xian Wu Taoist sect. Based on this, I guess that the orangutan's strength should be on par with yours. Between, or slightly worse than you. Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard with satisfaction and said, yes, that orangutan is indeed slightly inferior to me in strength. Immediately, a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, and he continued, actually, others can't tell the identity of the ape, but I know that it is my junior brother King Sang Taoist. After my junior brother transformed into a demon, he was different from other demons for some reason. He developed monkey characteristics. Taoist King Xuan didn't know about this, but Luo Ren understood it clearly and immediately explained. What real people don't know is that at the critical point between level 1 zombies and level 2 zombies, if a zombie swallows the flesh, blood or evolutionary crystals of an evolved animal, it may mutate and acquire the characteristics of the animal it swallowed. So, that's it. Taoist King Xuan suddenly realized and said, it seems that my junior brother has swallowed the golden monkey in the mountain. Chirp. Just As Taoist King Xuan finished speaking, the sound of a monkey's cry and weird laughter sounded, and it fell into the ears of the two of them instantly. Then there was a sound of breaking through the air, and a stick shadow came out of the darkness, hitting Taoist King Xuan head on. Taoist King Xuan reacted quickly, and pulled Luo Ren back a few meters. Then he saw a log stick as thick as an adult man's forearm hit the ground. The moonlight scattered, fell on the log stick, and fell on the creature man-ape holding the log stick. The term man-ape is used accurately. The creature in front of him is covered with long golden red hair, and its fingers and toes are as long. When it stands up, you can see that its hands are longer than its knees. Looking at its face again, two fangs popped out, and there was no humanity left in its eyes, but more bloodthirsty and ferocious. When Taoist King Xuan saw the ape, sadness flashed in his eyes again, but only for a moment. He returned to calm the next second. He said, "Junior brother, you have lost your soul and your body is possessed by demons. As a senior brother, I cannot sit idly by and do nothing. I will help you escape today." Then he said to Luo Ren, "Donor Luo, don't you want to know why I said the ape came at the right time? Later, I will fight the orangutan head on. You can observe secretly and see the right time to kill the orangutan with one blow." After hearing this, Luo Ren immediately understood that the man-ape was slightly weaker than Taoist King Xuan. Now that he was added to the group, there would be a great chance of killing him. This was not the right time. He immediately nodded solemnly and said, "Understood." Chirp. The orangutan suddenly let out a strange laugh. When the old Taoist King Xuan heard the sound, his eyes suddenly condensed and he said, "The little donor is relying on you." As soon as he finished speaking, Taoist King Xuan struck out like lightning, and the orangutan immediately responded. The two were extremely fast, not to mention ordinary people. Even level 1 peak evolvers could not see clearly. However, Luo Ren could see clearly and immediately moved his position continuously, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to the ape. The orangutan seems to have inherited the kung fu skills of Taoist King Xuan. The stick technique uses a tiger and a tiger to create wind, and the stick shadows are heavy. As a senior fellow apprentice, King Xuan Taoist is not inferior to the ape in both Taoism and martial arts. He dodges by stepping on the 5-element and bagua, and fights back with the Tekai Liang Yi in his hand. Luo Ren looked in amazement. If he had been caught by Taoist King Xuan within a few moves, he would have been defeated in less than 10 rounds against the ape. The old Taoist King Xuan and the ape zombies come and go, and no one can defeat the other for a while. Such a huge movement woke up the sleeping people, and soon the fire was soaring into the sky. The lights were bright, and the sound of dense footsteps was heard. Taoist priests uniformly dressed in Taoist priest costumes and holding swords and sticks rushed over, shouting and killing. After this group of Taoist priests, people carrying farm implements and tools followed closely. Lin Ya jumped over the crowd and came to the front. Looking at the golden summit, she saw Luo Ren and Taoist King Xuan who were fighting, as well as a monster with long golden and red hair. She exclaimed, "It's brother Luo, Taoist King Xuan, and a monster. A red gold monster." When everyone on the field heard this, someone immediately exclaimed, "It's a man-ape." Behind Lin Ya, Zhang Ziyan hurriedly took 2 steps forward and looked at the golden dome. He saw figures flashing around, but could not see their faces clearly. However, after listening to what Lin Ya said, and knowing that it was King Xuan Taoist who was fighting the orangutan, he was not too anxious, because he knew how powerful his master was, and the orangutan could not do anything to him. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Luo Ren, who was also on the main peak. Although he was wondering how Luo Ren could appear on the main peak at this time, he still shouted, "The ape is in danger. Donor Luo, be careful. If you have a chance, come down quickly." She must have heard what he said, as she saw Luo Ren waving in this direction from a distance. Lin Ya smiled and said, "Don't worry, Taoist Master He. Brother Luo will be fine. The ape can't do anything to him. Maybe we can get rid of this big harm tonight." Zhang Ziyan was surprised, turned to look at Lin Ya, and said, "Although Donor Luo can catch flying arrows with his bare hands, this ape's stick is much faster than flying arrows. Brother Luo can dodge the ape's stick. If he can catch the flying arrow, Taoist Master He, you will know later." Lin Ya is very confident in Luo Ren. In her mind, Luo Ren is the best in the world. It only takes a few minutes to deal with the ape creature. Her confident eyes moved away from Zhang Ziyan and looked back at the battle on the main peak. Zhang Ziyan also retracted his gaze and looked at the main peak, wondering in his heart, is Luo Ren really that powerful? Just when he was doubting, Luo Ren, who was watching from the side, suddenly moved so fast that he could only see the after image. After staring at it for so long, Luo Ren finally found an opportunity. Without any hesitation, he made a decisive move. The speed of a level 3 evolver exploded to the extreme. He clenched his right fist and hit the ape zombie with his back to him. The ape is indeed a level 3 alien zombie. The moment Luo Ren moved, it felt the danger. It swung the wooden stick in its hand and used a move to sweep away thousands of troops, forcing Kingsu and Taoist to dodge. At the same time, the inertial power continued backwards and then swept towards Luo Ren, trying to resolve the crisis. Unfortunately, Luo Ren had already started to kill, and he would never take back his punch. In his pupils, his fist rapidly enlarged, and at the same time, the round stick in his hand also hit the human who was attacking him. Bang! The two were hit almost at the same time. Luo Ren's fist, which was filled with all his strength, hit the head of the ape zombie. With a crack, his neck bone was directly broken. The round stick hit Luo Ren's left rib, and there was also a crack sound. The round stick broke, and Luo Ren was knocked out and fell on the edge of the cliff. The remaining strength made him rub the ground and go towards the cliff. In front of everyone, he fell off the cliff. "Brother Luo!" Lin Yao exclaimed, and immediately rushed to the main peak, ran to the place where Luo Ren fell, and looked down at the bottom of the cliff. It was pitch black, and no objects could be seen clearly. With a plop, Lin Yao collapsed on the ground. Tears could not stop falling. After so many days of getting along, Luo Ren had a very important position in her heart, just like a relative. The ape's neck was broken by a blow, and a nerve signal could not be transmitted. The lower body was directly paralyzed. Only the mouth on the head with a sunken face was still opening and closing. Taoist Kingsuan looked at the place where Luo Ren fell, saw the grief-stricken Lin Yao, walked up quickly, and sighed. "Man proposes, God disposes." I thought that the ape could be easily killed by a sneak attack, but who would have thought that there would be such a dramatic ending? Taoist Kingsuan said to Lin Yao, "Donor, please be sad." At this time, Zhang Ziyan and Lin Yao's parents ran up below. Zhang Ziyan saw Lin Yao and wanted to comfort him, but he saw Taoist Kingsuan shaking his head, so he had to give up. Lin Yao's parents came forward and saw their daughter's sad appearance. They felt bad. Lin Yao told them about Luo Ren's affairs in the past few days. They still had a very good impression of this young man. Now he fell off the cliff, which was really a pity. Chen Jinhe half squatted down and hugged her daughter. Lin Yao hugged her mother and sobbed, "Brother Luo, woo." The moonlight was so cold at this moment, it fell on the ground under the roof like a thin frost, and suddenly a meteor streaked across the sky. Zhang Ziyan looked at the falling meteor and sighed. It turns out that when people die, stars really fall. I said to the people up there, "Don't fall, don't fall, I'm not dead yet." Suddenly, Luo Ren's voice came from under the cliff. Everyone was surprised. Lin Yao stopped crying immediately and shouted excitedly, "Brother Luo, are you okay?" Luo Ren said, "I'm okay. That stick hit me so hard that I almost couldn't breathe, and I broke 2 ribs. Don't say anything. I can't use my strength now. You quickly find a way to pull me up. Quick, light up." Taoist Kingsuan said to Zhang Ziyan anxiously. Zhang Ziyan heard this and immediately shouted down the mountain, "Come here with 2 torches." As soon as he finished speaking, someone came running over. The person didn't see the torch, so Zhang Ziyan said anxiously, "Why are you here without any lighting tools?" The person said, "I have one." He took out a flashlight and said, "Now there is a shortage of electricity. I don't usually use it. Today, Luo Shaoxia is so righteous. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up and bring it." Zhang Ziyan grabbed the flashlight and interrupted the person. At this time, he still had the mute to talk. He walked to the edge of the cliff, turned on the flashlight, and immediately emitted a bright white light, which was much clearer than a torch. He shone it down the cliff, and immediately heard Luo Ren talking. "Who is it?" Don't blind my eyes. Several people looked over when they heard the voice and saw that Luo Ren's 5 fingers were inserted into the rock about 3 or 4 meters away from the edge of the cliff. Hanging like this, Zenran Kingsuan looked at Zhang Ziyan and said, "Hurry up and get the hemp rope." Chapter 269 Dragon Pattern Crystal, Part 1. Zhang Ziyan quickly fetched a 2-finger thick rope, and Lin Ya took the initiative to tie it. Taoist Kingsuan held the rope on the edge of the cliff and slowly lowered Lin Ya until she stopped beside Luo Ren, holding Luo Ren with one hand and the rope with the other. Master Kingsuan above slowly pulled the 2 of them up. After coming up, Luo Ren lay on the ground, looked at the starry sky, breathed a long sigh of relief, and said, "I almost thought I was going to explain it here." After saying that, he burst out laughing. He turned his head and saw Lin Ya, seeing the tear stains on her cheeks and her eyes that were red from crying. Her laughter gradually weakened. She sat up halfway, opened her mouth, thought for a moment, and finally said, "Xiaoya, you care about me so much. You are not afraid of pity. Are you jealous?" After saying that, there was another burst of laughter. Lin Ya's cheeks flushed, and she said angrily, "Brother Luo, what are you talking about?" She turned her head and saw the subtle expressions of her parents and said anxiously, "I just regard Brother Luo as my older brother. Don't think too much." Lin Ya's parents quickly shook their heads, waved their hands, and muttered, "Don't think wildly, don't think wildly." They said this, but Lin Ya could see clearly from their expressions that they were absolutely duplicitous. Luo Ren suppressed his laughter and looked at the ape zombie lying on the ground, unable to move, with only its mouth opening and closing. His eyes narrowed slightly. This was a level 3 alien zombie, and the evolution crystal in its head was naturally level 3. How is the little injured donor? At this moment, Taoist Kingsuan squatted down and asked. Luo Ren came back to his senses, smiled and said, "It's not serious, just a few broken ribs. It will be fine after a few days of rest." Upon hearing this, Taoist Kingsuan took Luo Ren's hand, put 3 fingers on his wrist, remained silent for a few seconds, and then let go of his hand. Taoist Kingsuan said, "I suffered some internal injuries, but they are not serious. I will prescribe a medicine to treat internal injuries later, and let the disciples of the medicine hall brew it. The little donor's physique is extraordinary. With the medicine, he can recover in 3 to 5 days, without leaving any sequelae." Luo Ren cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Master." Kingsuan Taoist said, "There is no need to thank you. The injury you caused was to eliminate the great harm of the ape. It is the right thing for the old Taoist to heal your injuries." Luo Ren smiled without saying anything, then looked at the orangutan, pondered for a moment, and asked, "I wonder what the real person plans to do with the orangutan." Taoist Kingsuan stood up and looked at the ape on the ground. After a long time, he sighed and said, "The ape was transformed by my junior brother, Taoist Kingsuan. I want to bury his body in the back mountain." Zhang Ziyan was horrified when he heard this and stared at the orangutan's face for a while. Although his flesh and blood were somewhat bruised by Luo Ren's punch, he could still tell that he was indeed a relaxed Taoist after having been with him day and night for more than 20 years. The orangutan is actually Uncle Kingsuan. Zhang Ziyan sighed. Luo Ren was silent for a moment and said, "Real person, after a human becomes a zombie, every inch of skin and every cell on the human body will contain countless zombie viruses. It's just that it's not appropriate to bury the ape. I suggest that he be cremated and then buried." Monks and Taoist priests all pursue physical immortality, believing that physical immortality means becoming an immortal or being reincarnated. However, Taoist Kingsuan is not an old antique, let alone a remnant of feudalism. Even though he is over 80 years old, he is more sensible and believes in science than many young people. He didn't have much psychological burden on the matter of cremation, and Luo Ren said that even after death, the demon's body will still have its breath, which may disturb the living. In this case, it is better to burn it than to let it harm others and yourself after death. So he nodded and said, "Then according to the wishes of Donor Luo, after cremating the ape, the ashes will be buried in the back mountain." Without further ado, As soon as the message was conveyed, people immediately collected firewood, and soon a high firewood pile was set up in the square outside the main hall, and the orangutan corpse was placed on the top of the firewood pile. Holding a torch in his hand, Zhang Ziyan walked to the pyre and bowed 3 times. The other Taoist priests from the Xian Wu Taoist sect followed and bowed 3 times. Then Zhang Ziyan let the pyre in front of him point. The open fire spread extremely quickly, and in less than half a minute, it covered the entire pyre. The bright fire turned into a raging fire, wrapping and burning the ape corpse. Luo Ren stared at the fire with Lin Yao's support, his eyes twinkling. The level 3 evolutionary crystal was still very tempting. He wanted to wait for the fire to go out, and before the ashes were collected, he fished in troubled waters and fished out the evolutionary crystal. While he was thinking about it, Taoist King Xuan suddenly said, "Little donor, you are seriously injured, so you should go back and rest first." Luo Ren looked at Taoist King Xuan, pondered for a long time, nodded, and said, "Okay, then I will take my leave first." After that, he left with Lin Yao's help. After watching Luo Ren's back for a while, Taoist King Xuan turned his gaze to the fire. How could he not notice Luo Ren's various subtle expressions, but he did not have much emotional fluctuations. The previous conversation with Luo Ren was still fresh in his memory. He remembered that Luo Ren said that there was a magical evolutionary crystal in the demon's head, and the reason why Luo Ren had great power was because of the evolutionary crystal point. Although he is already 86 years old and has seen many ups and downs, he is still a young man at heart. He is also very interested in this thing and wants to see it point. The orangutan is a mutated demon, so there will be evolutionary crystals in its head. Otherwise, Luo Ren wouldn't care. Therefore, this time he had selfish motives and wanted to take the evolutionary crystal of the ape as his own. This may be due to curiosity, or it may be that he does not want his junior brother's relics to fall into the hands of others. With Lin Yao's help, Luo Ren returned to his residence. Luo Ren said, "Thank you very much, Xiaoya." "Brother Luo, what are you saying thank you for?" Lin Yao said, thinking for a while, and then asked, "Brother Luo, the ape seems to be a very powerful zombie. Don't you plan to take its evolution crystal?" Luo Ren sighed and smiled bitterly. "I do want to, but after all, this is someone else's territory. Taoist King Xuan is very powerful. Even if I'm not injured, I'm not his opponent. It is almost impossible to take the ape evolution crystal from him." Lin Yao exclaimed, "So King Xuan is so powerful, Brother Luo, you are not his opponent. It is not shameful to lose to Taoist King Xuan," and Luo Ren does not intend to hide it, so he tells Lin Yao about the fight with Taoist King Xuan. After listening to this, Lin Yao analyzed, so it's not that Luo's strength and speed are not enough, but his fighting skills are not as good as King Zhu and Zenran's. Didn't someone say that when 2 people are equal in speed and strength, the key to victory will be skills and courage? Luo Ren nodded and said, "Indeed." Lin Yao stared at Luo Ren, and suddenly an idea flashed in her mind, saying, "Brother Luo, aren't you going to recuperate here for a while? In my opinion, you're idle anyway. Why not ask King Zhu and Zenran to teach you Kung Fu, and the ape evolution crystal will be a thank you gift." Luo Ren's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he said, "That's a good idea." Chapter 270 Dragon Pattern Crystal, Part 2. Finding the dragon pattern crystal in such a short time was beyond Luo Ren's expectation. Right now, there are still 2 months until the virus cannot be suppressed. During this period, it is better to learn some killing skills to improve combat effectiveness. He looked at Lin Yao and praised, "Xiaoya, you are so smart." Lin Yao scratched her head and said with a smile, "Brother Luo actually told the truth. You're really not humble." Luo Ren marveled at Lin Yao's shamelessness, which was almost catching up with him. Time flies. Lin Yao talks blah blah blah. Luo Ren listens attentively, and before he knows it, the bright moon in the sky is already in the sky, and it is obviously past 12 o'clock point late at night. When a man and a woman are alone in the same room, it is inevitable that people will gossip. Although no one here cares about this, but thinking of Li Ziyan, it is better to stop talking. In this way, Luo Ren decisively interrupted Lin Yao's solo speech, then chatted for a few words, found an excuse at random, and sent Lin Yao away. Lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling, my eyelids became heavier and heavier, and I didn't know when I closed them completely and fell asleep. A ray of sunlight shined into the room through the glass window, shining directly on the bed. Luo Ren slowly opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the changes in his body. The pain has reduced a bit, and all the energy in the body has returned to normal. The level 3 evolver's repair ability is unexpectedly powerful. He got off the bed, stretched out, and immediately felt the injury on his body. He grinned in pain and said helplessly, "We still can't make any big movements." He walked to the door, opened the door, and faced Chen Zehun, the Taoist boy who delivered the medicine. "Master Sect asked me to give you medicine to treat internal injuries." Luo Ren looked at the bowl on the tray held by Chen Zehun, which was still steaming. He took a slight whiff of the orange-red medicinal soup with a strong flavor of Chinese herbal medicine, and said, "Thank you, little master." Then he took the medicinal soup, licked his lips, and drank it in one gulp. His posture was comparable to that of a hero drinking in a martial arts TV series. Drink medicine like this, and only after drinking it can you taste the taste of the medicinal soup. In one word, it is bitter. Luo Ren put the empty bowl back on the tray with a bitter look on his face and thanked him a second time. "Thank you, little master." "Donor, you're welcome." The little Taoist priest Chen Zehun nodded slightly and was about to leave. "Little master, wait a minute." Luo Ren stopped the little Taoist priest and then asked, "Little master, does he know where Lin Ya lives?" The young Taoist priest Chen Huanzi smiled and said, "Of course I know that the donor is looking for the donor Lin Ya." Luo Ren nodded and said, "Your Majesty, could you please take me there, young master?" Chen Huanzi smiled and said, "Of course, donor, please come with me." Following the little Taoist priest down to the second floor, then turned left and came to room marked 222. The little Taoist priest Chen Zehun said, "Donor Lin Ya lives here. Thank you, little master." Luo Ren thanked him. Chen Zehun nodded slightly, then took the bowl of soup and medicine and left on his own, leaving Luo Ren alone. Luo Ren faced the door and knocked 3 times. Soon he heard a rustling sound inside and then heard, "Here it comes." Then the door opened from the inside. Lin Ya immediately saw Luo Ren and said in surprise, "Brother Luo, why are you here? Come in and sit down." Luo Ren was not polite and walked into the room. Lin Ya closed the door and immediately brought a chair for Luo Ren to sit on. While pouring water for Luo Ren, she asked, "Brother Luo, how is your injury? Are you feeling better?" Luo Ren smiled and replied, "It's much better. I should be able to recover in another 3 or 4 days." Lin Ya brought some water and said, "That's good." She sat down on the small bed and said, "That night was so scary. I thought, Brother Luo, you really fell off the cliff. But having said that, Brother Luo, you are really awesome. You can penetrate the rock wall with your bare hands, just like the characters in martial arts novels. And that stick is so powerful and heavy that Brother Luo can hold it, even if the stick breaks. His defense is not as good as that of a big zombie, and there are more." As soon as she found the topic, Lin Ya's habit of talking a lot came back again, and she kept talking. Bang bang bang, a sudden knock on the door interrupted Lin Ya. She glanced at the door and wondered, "Who is it?" Then he got up and walked to the door. After opening the door, he saw his mother Chen Jinhua at the first glance, and his father Lin Wen at the second glance. Chen Jinhua and Lin Wen also saw Luo Ren in the room. Their expressions froze. Then they looked at each other and slightly Chen Jinhua said to her daughter, "Mom supports you." After that, Lin Ya closed the door without waiting for explanation and walked away with her husband with smiles on her face. At the same time, she couldn't stop talking and said, "This girl is still lying to us. That's okay. It's all the same. We're in the same room." Lin Ya's father, Lin Wen, also sighed with a smile on his face. "Children and grandchildren will have their own blessings. Let's not meddle in it." In the room, Lin Ya turned around and met Luo Ren's eyes. She suddenly blushed and said anxiously, "Brother Luo was my parents just now." "They?" Luo Ren waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's okay." After a moment of silence, the blush on Lin Ya's face faded a lot, and then she spoke again. "By the way, Brother Luo, what are you here for?" Luo Ren took a sip of the cold drink in the cup, then nodded and said, I really have something to ask you for help. What's going on? Linya asked. Do you still remember the purpose I told you about coming to Cheyenne Wu Mountain? Luo Ren asked. Linya repeatedly and said, I remember. It is to find a magical ore to forge a peerless sword. Luo Ren stood up, then put the water cup in his hand on the table, and said, yes, I have found the location of the ore, but I'm injured now, and can't dig out the ore, so I came to you for help. So, that's it. Linya murmured and complained. So brother Luo, you came to me, just to find free hard labor. Luo Ren touched his nose. What Linya said about hard labor was actually the case. He couldn't help asking, you won't refuse, will you? Linya closed her mouth tightly, stared at Luo Ren, and remained silent. Just when Luo Ren thought Linya was going to refuse, Linya suddenly said, no, how could I refuse? Brother Luo, you saved my life, and helped me find my parents. Although there were some accidental factors, it was because of you after all. It's just hard work, it's not a big deal, how could I refuse it? Luo Ren laughed and said, you are very loyal, so good. Linya also laughed and said, let's go now without further delay. Okay. Luo Ren nodded heavily. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Dragon Pattern Crystal, Part 2. The two of them walked in tandem, with Luo Ren in front and Linya carrying the hoe behind, and walked straight towards the main peak of Golden Summit. Passing by Cheyenne Wu Hall, Luo Ren turned his head, and saw Taoist Kingsun sitting cross-legged in meditation. Without disturbing Taoist Kingsun, the two walked through the hall. After a few minutes' journey, they quickly reached the Golden Summit of the main peak. In the current environment, there were no tourists, and it was difficult to see anyone on the Golden Summit of the main peak. The two of them walked into the Golden Summit Hall without encountering any obstacles. Linya was surprised, pointed to the front seat, and said, I remember there was a statue of Emperor Xuanwu in the front seat. Why is it missing? She glanced around and immediately saw the 3-meter-high statue of Emperor Xuanwu next to her. She was even more surprised and said, I'm a good boy. Emperor Xuanwu appeared, so I ran up to it. Luo Ren smiled and said, what's the manifestation? I moved it there. What? Linya was shocked when she heard this. She walked quickly to the statue of Emperor Xuanwu, knocked on it, and heard a crisp sound, saying, this is a whole piece of purple golden copper, estimated to weigh tens of thousands of kilograms. It's actually brother Luo, please move it. Coming here? Luo Ren nodded, and said with a very certain tone, it's me, Ism. Linya was shocked and admired at first. Her eyes were full of stars when she looked at Luo Ren, and then she complained, brother Luo, you spoke English wrong, you should use that smur. Luo Ren looked at the ceiling in embarrassment, then walked to the statue and said, don't worry about these details, let's dig first. Linya stepped forward with a hoe, stamped her feet, and said, that's it? Luo Ren nodded heavily and said, yes, that's it. Then I'll dig. After saying that, Linya spat twice on each of her palms, rubbed them together with a very practiced movement, and then dug with a hoe in both hands. Linya is a level 2 evolver, and her strength is many times greater than that of an ordinary adult man. The soil was constantly being dug up, and within a short while, a pit half as high as a man was dug, but there was no dragon pattern crystal at all. Signs continue digging, and soon the pit will be as tall as Linya. Unfortunately, the dragon pattern crystal has not been seen yet. Linya put her hoe on the ground, and took advantage of her own body to shout upwards, no, brother Luo, do you want to continue digging down? Luo Ren was also a little anxious. Could it be that the detector had detected an error? He quickly raised his arm and pressed the 2 buttons of the detector at the same time to turn on the detection mode. After the detection mode is turned on, the detector immediately starts to vibrate and issue a prompt at the same time. Dragon pattern crystal detected, less than 10 meters away. Looking at the screen, the display still shows a place instead of an arrow, which shows that there is indeed a dragon digging pattern crystal here. Turning off the detection mode, he clenched his fists and shouted to Lin Ya in the pit, "Keep Lin." Ya responded, "Okay." After twisting her neck, Lin Ya continued to turn the hoe, and baskets of soil were brought up. Soon, the pit was 2 Lin Ya deep, but there was still no dragon pattern crystal. Luo Ren refused to give up and asked Lin Ya to continue digging. Time passed quietly. About half an hour later, bite a sound as crisp as a silver bell came from the pit, then lingered in the hall, and then Lin Ya's voice was heard coming from the pit. Brother Luo dug it up. "It's a big piece, but, what?" Luo Ren asked hurriedly. "Aha." A figure emerged from the pit, and Lin Ya was seen holding 2 dark black stones, one large and one small. Lin Ya handed the black stone to Luo Ren and said, "Is this it?" Luo Ren took the 2 stones as black as coal and frowned. The dragon pattern crystal didn't look like this. It looked more like black coal. Just as he was about to throw away the black stone, he suddenly heard footsteps, and then saw Taoist King Sun walking into the hall, and glanced at the black stone in Luo Ren's hand. Luo Ren was slightly startled, and then asked, "The real person is not in the Xian Wu hall, how come he is here?" Taoist King Sun chuckled and said, "You have to stretch your muscles after sitting for a long time. Did the little benefactor find the ore?" At this point, his eyes fell on 2 black stones. Luo Ren raised the black stone in his hand and said with a smile, "That's right. Do you want to take a look at it?" "The old Taoist will take a look at it." Taoist King Sun took the larger black stone handed over by Luo Ren and weighed it a few times. There was nothing strange about it, but it was just a little heavier than ordinary stones. He returned the stone to Luo Ren, then glanced at the smaller black stone and said, "Little donor, can I show this stone to the old man?" "Of course." Luo Ren immediately handed the small black stone to Taoist King Sun. Taoist King Sun took the stone and was stunned for a moment, then handed it to Luo Ren. Luo Ren reached out and was about to take it, but Taoist King Sun withdrew his hand and held up the stone to look at it carefully. He chuckled and said, "This stone is getting better and better the more you look at it. Anyway, there are 2 pieces. How about giving this small one to me, donor Luo?" Luo Ren stared at the stone in King Sun Taoist's hand with a complicated expression. He hesitated for a long time and finally nodded and said, "After all, this ore appears in the Xian Wu Taoist sect. If I find it, I naturally have to get a share from the Xian Wu Taoist sect. If you take 1 piece, it will be yours." Taoist King Sun stroked his beard and said with a smile, "It's just a joke between the old Taoist and the young benefactor. Take it." With that said, he returned the black stone in his hand to Luo Ren, pondered for a moment, and then said, "I still have something to do. You 2 go slowly." After saying that, Taoist King Sun left the Golden Summit Hall. Lin Ya looked at Luo Ren and asked, "Brother Luo, are we leaving?" Luo Ren was stunned by the sound of Taoist King Sun leaving. It seemed that he was narrow-minded. Seeing that Luo Ren did not answer, Lin Ya raised her voice and shouted, "Brother Luo." Luo Ren came back to his senses, looked at Lin Ya, and said, "What's wrong?" "I was distracted and didn't hear it." Lin Ya asked again, "Now that we have the ore, are we leaving?" Luo Ren threw the black stone in his hand on the ground, shook his head, and said, "We can't leave yet, Lin." Ya was surprised and said, "We still need to dig? Isn't this the ore you want?" "Brother Luo, you just told Taoist King Sun this?" Luo Ren smiled lightly and said, "This is indeed not the ore I'm looking for. Xiaoya, please help me." Lin Ya looked at the 8 or 9 meter deep pit, took a deep breath, and said helplessly, "Okay." She then jumped into the pit, spat skillfully, rubbed her hands, and then raised the hoe to dig down. Dang. The crisp sound of metal hitting metal echoed in the pit. Lin Ya immediately covered her ears. After waiting for a long time, the sound just subsided. She looked down and saw a faint fluorescent light. She dropped the hoe and threw it away with her hands. After a while, a fist-sized stone with dragon patterns on the surface was exposed. She picked up the stone, jumped out of the pit, handed the stone to Luo Ren, and asked, "Brother Luo, look, is this the ore you want?" Luo Ren took the dragon patterned stone and was extremely excited. This is the dragon patterned crystal. It seems that the accuracy of the detector is still very strong. He held the dragon patterned crystal tightly, took a deep breath, suppressed his excitement, and immediately put the dragon patterned crystal into the innermost pocket of his shirt. Seeing this action, Linya has concluded that the beautiful stone is the or that Luo Ren is looking for. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief and finally could rest. So she asked, "Brother Luo, can we withdraw now?" But Luo Ren still shook his head. She was devastated and said in shock, "We won't have to dig anymore, will we?" Luo Ren looked at the pile of soil on the ground and said, "No need to dig, but we have to fill the soil back." Linya thought Luo Ren's words made sense. Thinking that backfilling is better than digging again, she nodded and said, "Okay, I'll fill it back now." As soon as she finished speaking, she started point after a busy period. Luo Ren finally got tired of sitting and stood up to stretch his muscles. This time, he pulled his wounds again and grimaced in pain. Point at this time, Linya also filled the last shovel of soil, patted it flat, wiped the sweat, breathed a sigh of relief, and said, "Done." Looked at Luo Ren and said, "Brother Luo, can we withdraw?" Luo Ren looked at the ground and found that there was still some mud on it, but it didn't matter, so he said, "Let's withdraw." Chapter 272 Visitors from the Military Region. The next day, Chiang City Point in the military conference room, Suan Tong, Liu Liangxin, Luo Shan, Luo Hei, Qi-jun and other management personnel next to Luo Ren gathered together. The atmosphere in the room was neither tense nor relaxed, but peaceful. Everyone held a written report in their hands and was reading the report carefully. About 5 or 6 minutes later, Suan Tong took the lead to put down the report, looked at everyone, and said, "Everyone, the commander is not here at the moment, and we are in charge of all matters in the city point at present. Various industries and departments are operating normally, and the construction of new urban areas is also progressing in a balanced manner. However, because the chief has not shown up for many days, some people in the city spread rumors that the chief has passed away." After a pause, Suan Tong took a deep breath and continued, "This rumor has been circulated among quite a few people. Although it is just a rumor and has not affected the normal operation of the city for the time being, you all know that the chief is the backbone of everyone and the spiritual support of everyone. If rumors are allowed to spread and develop, the consequences will be disastrous." Looking at everyone on the field, he said firmly, "So, we must take action to arrest the people who spread the rumors and completely eliminate the momentum of spreading rumors." Luo Shan, Luo Hei and other escort squadron leaders nodded, agreeing with Suan Tong's statement. But Liu Liangxin frowned slightly, neither agreeing nor objecting. Suan Tong noticed Liu Liangxin's reaction and immediately asked, "Liangxin, if you have any opinions or suggestions, just tell me." Hearing this, Liu Lian did not hide it and said, "Right now, rumors have been spread among a considerable number of people. In a closed environment like Chiang City, it is almost impossible to completely curb the spread of rumors. If we go to great lengths to control rumors, it is very likely that people will become more convinced of rumors, thus affecting public security in the city. Therefore, in my opinion, we only need to catch the people who spread the rumors. As for the rumors, there is no need to deliberately control them and let them spread freely. This rumor is only spread because the commander has not returned for a long time. So we only need to wait for the commander to return, and the rumor will naturally be disproven." After saying that, she narrowed her eyes slightly and said, "Don't you think the commander will come back?" Liu Liangxin's words aroused the unanimous approval of everyone present. Suan Tong thought for a while and felt that Liu Liangxin was right. She was overwhelmed by various things these days, so she didn't think enough about it. With more people, it is really difficult to manage. Take a lot of thought. When Luo Ren was in the city, he saw him sitting, lying down, and wandering around. He never looked distressed. I really don't know how he managed it. No longer thinking about anything else, Suan Tong nodded and said, "Okay, just do what Lianzhen said." She looked at Qi-jun and said, "Qi-jun, go ahead and arrest the person who spread the rumors." Qi-jun responded, "No problem, Su." And Tong looked around at the crowd again, waited for a long time, and when no one spoke, she stood up and said, "Okay, since everyone has no questions, let's send our meeting here today." As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately stood up. packed up the things on the table, and walked out of the conference room. Suan Tong and Liu Liangxin left the inner city military area side by side and headed towards the mobile base. While walking, Suan Tong sighed and suddenly asked, "When do you think Brother Ren can come back?" Liu Liangxin was silent for a while and said, "It should be soon." Hearing this, Suan Tong fell into silence. What does it mean to be fast? How long does it mean to be fast? In this way, the two of them remained silent without saying a word, and soon the mobile base appeared in their eyes. At this time, the guards on guard trotted over to greet it. The two were puzzled. The guards always stood guard and never left their posts. Even if Luo Ren came back, they would not take the initiative to greet them. But this time, they actually ran over to greet them, which made them feel strange. The guard ran up to the two men, saluted, and said, "Report to Captain Su." The brothers who just marched in the sky came to report that outside the East City Gate, Xia Chuan, deputy commander of the Wasteland Military Region, brought a few people and said that those people came from the Jiangnan Military Region. "Come and say you want to see the chief." Jiangnan Military Region. The two of them were surprised that the Jiangnan Military Region, one of the 6 major military regions, actually sent someone here. After looking at each other, Liu Lian was shocked and said, "It can't be Sun Cakesun." Suan Tong had already heard about Sun Cakesun and knew that there was a conflict between him and Luo Ren. If it was really him, it might be someone with bad intentions, so he immediately asked, "Who are the specific people on the other side?" Brothers from Tingshan Xinjian said that including Xia Chuan in the Wasteland Military District, there are only 6 people. The guard said, "There are only 6 people." Suan Tong thought to herself, then looked at Liu Liangxin and said, "Let's go over there first." Liu Liangxin said, "Okay." The two drove the vehicle towards the east gate and arrived at their destination in about 20 minutes, quickly ascending the city wall. The Cheyenne March soldiers on duty all raised their firearms and looked alert. Suan Tong looked outside the city and saw only 2 off-road vehicles. Looking at the models, they were indeed military vehicles from the Wasteland Military Region. Just as they cast their gaze, the people in the car also saw them. The passenger door of the first car opened. Xia Chuan got out of the car. He waved to Liu Liangxin and said, "Liangxin, Miss Su." Needless to say, Liu Liangxin was very familiar with Xia Chuan, and Xia Chuan had stayed in Xiang City for several days. Suan Tong also had a deep impression of him and remembered his appearance. Suan Tong asked, "Deputy Commander Xia, what do you want to do here?" Xia Chuan pointed to the car behind him and said, "The leader of the major military region is in the car. He came here to see Commander Luo Ren and discuss some matters with him." Suan Tong thought for a moment and said, "Deputy Commander Xia, please ask the people in the car to get off and talk." Xia Chuan hesitated for a moment and responded, "Wait a minute." Then he walked to the car behind and opened the back door. The person sitting in the car was Deputy Commander Su from the Jiangnan Military Region. Xia Chuan said, "Brother Su, the people in Xiang City want you to get off and say a few words. They are also for safety considerations. What do you think?" You are still so vigilant about our military." Deputy Commander Su smiled coldly, looked up at Xia Chuan's embarrassment, and said, "Okay." After that, he shouted, "Everyone get off the car." Xia Chuan breathed a sigh of relief, then walked to the front car, said a few words to the inside, and then the door opened, and Sun Cakesun got off the car. When Liu Liangxin saw Sun Cakesun, her eyes suddenly condensed and she said, "It's Sun Cakesun." Suan Tong frowned slightly. It seems that the person who came here is not a good person. When Sun Cakesun saw Liu Liangxin, anger flashed in her eyes. This woman actually chose Luo Ren. See, she will definitely regret it. The people in the car behind got off, and Suan Tong immediately turned her eyes. When she saw the person coming, she was extremely surprised and stunned for a moment. Deputy Commander Su got off the car and saw Suan Tong on the city wall. He was immediately shocked physically and mentally. He couldn't believe his eyes. He rubbed his eyes hard, but the scene in front of him was still there. Only then did he make sure that he was not wrong. He opened his mouth and held it for a long time before he spit out 2 words heavily, and tongue. Chapter 273, Studying Martial Arts. Suan Tong was stunned for a long time, came to her senses, jumped off the city wall, and went straight to Deputy Commander Su. This move shocked everyone. Xia Chuan, Sun Cakesuan and others reacted even more fiercely. They thought Suan Tong was going to attack Deputy Commander Su. Sun Cakesuan shouted, "Protect Deputy Commander Su." As soon as the words fell, Xia Chuan and others immediately stood in front of Deputy Commander Su. But at this moment, a big hand placed on Sun Cakesuan's shoulder, then pushed it away, and Deputy Commander Su passed directly over everyone. Suan Tong stopped in front of Deputy Commander Su, and looked at him blankly. "And Tong." Deputy Commander Su called. As soon as she finished speaking, Suan Tong hugged Deputy Commander Su. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes involuntarily, and she shouted, "Brother." This made everyone even more surprised. Xia Chuan and Sun Cakesuan looked at each other, and Xia Chuan said to himself, "The Deputy Commander Su is called Suan Min, and the commander of Chiang City's Shan marching army is named Suan Dong. Suan Min, Suan Dong." He slapped his head and said, "I'm stupid too." Sun Cakesuan asked with an expression, as if he had eaten a child to death, "You are good friends with Deputy Commander Su. Do you know his sister, Xia?" Chuan rolled his eyes and said, "Deputy Commander Su and I are indeed good friends, but we usually talk about men's matters and military matters. Why should I get to know her sister when I have nothing to do? I'm not running around." His sister befriends him. "Even if I don't know him, you must have seen him before, right?" Sun Cakesuan said helplessly. "I haven't seen him before." Xia Chuan shook his head decisively and said, "I met him in the army. I have never even been to his home. Where have I seen his sister?" After hearing this, Sun Cakesuan was completely speechless and stopped arguing. Suan Tong let go of her brother, wiped away her tears with her sleeves, and asked urgently, "How are mom and dad?" When Suan Min heard this, his expression suddenly froze, and he felt anxious for a moment. A smile crept onto his face and he said, "My parents are fine. They are fine. Brother, don't lie to me. How are my parents?" Although Suan Min's expression changed only for a moment, Suan Tan still noticed it, and her heart immediately skipped a beat, knowing that what she said next was definitely not the truth. In fact, over such a long time, she had seen many life and death separations and human tragedies, and she was ready to accept the bad news. Suan Min saw that Suan Tong's face was more calm and resolute than before, and she couldn't help feeling sad and self-blame. She must have experienced a lot in the long time since the disaster struck. After hearing what Suan Tong said, he knew that his sister had been very smart since she was a child, and he was not going to hide it. He said, "My father's place in the central military region has lost contact. Yunhei City, where my mother is, has a large population base and high density. At this time, it has been positioned as an SSS level disaster area. The SSS level designation is the classification of the severity of disasters across the country within the military and government. They are C, B, A, S, SS, and SSS, with C being the lowest and SSS being the highest." Suan Min knew that Suan Tong didn't understand the SSS level demarcation, so after finishing speaking, he immediately gave an explanation. After Suan Tong heard this, she clenched her fists. The central war zone was out of contact and most likely had fallen. The highest level of disaster in Yunhei City, Huawei's worst hit area, showed an average level of danger. If it was 100% the size of a watermelon, her mother's chance of survival would be only as small as a sesame seed. She was always ready to accept the bad news. When she actually heard the bad news, she was far less strong than she imagined. She bit her lip, blood dripped from her hand. She clenched her fist, hesitated too hard, and her nails pierced into her flesh. She never felt it to pain. Suan Min immediately shouted, "And Tong." Suan Tong heard the sound, looked up at Suan Min, grinned, and said, "I'm fine." As soon as she finished speaking, her vision went dark, and she fell forward. Suan Min quickly held her up with quick eyes and hands. Seeing this, Liu Liangxin from the city ran over in a hurry. Seeing the unconscious Suan Tong, she said anxiously, "She is so anxious that she is heartbroken. Send her to the hospital quickly." Xianwu Mountain, Xianwu Taoist sect. The clouds and mist are lingering, and the birds are chirping crisply. Standing on the main peak, overlooking the green mountains, it feels like a fairyland on earth. There is a protruding place on the cliff. Looking from the side, the protruding rock is only 1 hand thick and looks very easy to collapse. At this time, Taoist King Sun was sitting cross-legged point after a long time. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the Golden Dome Hall thoughtfully, then stood up and was about to leave this place point. Just at this time, footsteps sounded and Luo Ren was seen rushing towards him, stopping in front of him. Luo Ren said respectfully, "Master." Taoist King Sun asked, "What is the purpose of Donor Luo coming here?" Luo Ren said, "I went to the Cheyenne Wu Hall to look for you, the real person, but I couldn't find you. Thanks to young Master Chen Zehun, he told me that you were here, so I rushed over." "Oh." Taoist King Sun said in surprise, "I wonder why Donor Luo is looking for me. I came here to ask the real person to teach me the martial arts of the Cheyenne Wu Dao sect." Luo Ren did not intend to beat around the bush. He went straight to the point and explained his purpose directly. Master King Sun stroked his beard gently, walked from the protruding rocks to the land, shook his head and said, "The Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect has rules. The Taoist methods can be passed down to people all over the world, while the martial arts techniques are only passed down to the disciples of the sect and those who are destined." As soon as these words came out, Luo Ren was instantly disappointed. Seeing this, Taoist King Sun laughed and said, "The little benefactor braved many dangers and traveled thousands of miles to come to our Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect and found the ore he wanted here. In this way, he is indeed destined to be with our Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect. Since the little benefactor wants to learn from our Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect, Kung Fu can be taught by a seasoned person." The disappointment in his heart immediately disappeared, and surprise appeared on his face. He quickly clasped his fists and said, "Thank you, Master." King Zenren stroked his beard and smiled lightly, saying, "There is no time to lose, little donor. Please follow me." Backyard, martial arts training ground. King Sun Taoist said, "Little donor, your strength is far beyond that of ordinary people, not inferior to the old Taoist, so you can skip the training of skills and practice martial arts skills directly." So, what is martial arts skills? It is the movements and moves to subdue the enemy as quickly as possible. Luo Ren listened carefully to the martial arts teaching of King Sun Taoist. Suddenly, his body and mind were shaken. He took a few deep breaths and thought to himself, "What's going on? Is it a recurrence of the injury?" King Sun Taoist noticed that Luo Ren was different and immediately stopped teaching and then asked, "Little donor, what's wrong with you?" Luo Ren waved his hand and said, "I don't know why my heartbeat suddenly accelerated, but now it's okay." King Sun Taoist paused for a moment and then said, "Since it's okay, then let's continue. Just now, we talked about how to practice the moves. In fact, it is very simple. It is to practice hard. Practice a move hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of times until it becomes a habit and a subconscious conditioned reflex. This is considered to be practiced. After the moves are practiced, it is time for actual combat. As the saying goes, no matter how beautiful the moves are, if they can't knock people down, they are just fancy. So, you must practice in actual combat. Okay, no matter how much you say, it's better to practice it yourself." After a pause, waiting for Luo Ren to digest it, Taoist King Sun continued to ask, "Little donor, what type of fighting method do you want to learn?" Luo Ren rubbed his chin, thought for a long time, and said, "I want to learn swordsmanship and boxing." "Okay." Taoist King Sun stroked his beard and said, "Then let's learn swordsmanship first." Chapter 274 Sunset and Evening Glow. The swordsmanship taught by Taoist King Sun is not as fancy as martial arts novels and martial arts routines, nor is it like Taoist martial arts, which uses softness to overcome hardness and move 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces. What it emphasizes is speed, strength, and accuracy. Luo Ren is a level 3 evolver. He has no problems with speed and strength. He does not need to spend years working hard to develop his skills. He only needs to practice the control of strength and accuracy point. The so-called force control refers to how much force should be used every time the knife is used to achieve the best effect point. If the force is not well controlled, if it is too big, it will most likely reveal flaws. If it is too small, it will not be able to cause effective damage to the enemy point. Then there is the accuracy. Whether it is a knife, sword, or other weapon, it all pays attention to the accuracy. Even modern firearms also pay attention to the accuracy. If your aim is not accurate, and you cannot hit anyone, no matter how fast or powerful you are, it will be an ineffective point. In addition to these two, you also need to master the basics of sword skills, including splitting, cutting, teasing, sweeping, and stabbing. Why is there a stab? It stands to reason that a sword is edged on both sides and is suitable for stabbing, while a knife is edged on one side and is mainly used for chopping, etc. Point. In fact, this is not the case. There are many types of knives, and although they are only edged on one side, it does not hinder thrusting. As the saying goes, a gun without a tip can stab someone to death, but a knife with a tip cannot stab someone to death. After Taoist King Sun explained the most basic theories, he began to formally guide Luo Ren in sword practice. Point. First, learn the basics of sword skills, including chopping, teasing, sweeping, and stabbing. Starting from chopping, hold the knife with both hands, raise the iron knife high above your head, and then suddenly chop down. Point. The postures of the sword technique are very simple, and Luo Ren learned them all in just half an hour. However, knowing it does not mean that the technique sword has been mastered. It still needs practice to continuously improve the proficiency. Therefore, after Luo Ren learned the basic sword skills, Taoist King Sun asked Luo Ren to practice each of chopping, teasing, sweeping, and stabbing thousands of times. Luo Ren's physical injuries are not completely healed now, so every time he presses for strength, his right rib still feels a dull pain, but he can tolerate this level of pain. Point. In this way, there is an additional figure on the martial arts field today. It is a person who repeats the same action for a long time. Point. Jiang City, hospital. Point. On the hospital bed, Suan Tang's face was pale and her eyes were full of sorrow. Liu Liangxin asked with concern, "How do you feel? Is there anything uncomfortable?" Suan Tang waved her hands and said, "I'm fine." After that, she sat up from the hospital bed and asked, "Where are my brother and the others?" Liu Liangxin said, "I met Saudi Arabia on the way to the hospital, so I asked him to entertain Ziachuan and your brother. I think he should be in the reception room now." Suan Tang nodded, and then got off the hospital bed. Liu Liangxin pulled her and said, "You were so anxious just now, you'd better rest for a while." "No need." Suan Tang broke free from Liu Liangxin's hand, looked at her, and said, "I still don't know what my brother and the others are going to do when they come here from the Jiangnan military region, or what they have to do. I can't lie in the hospital bed at this time." After saying that, she walked out of the ward, and Liu Liangxin hurriedly followed her. The two quickly arrived downstairs where the reception room was. The guard at the door saw the two and immediately saluted respectfully. Suan Tang asked the guard if Suan Min and Ziachuan were in the reception room. When the guard responded in the affirmative, he went directly to the reception room without saying anything. Point. At this time, a woman in her 20s wearing a cheongsam stood at the door of the reception room. She was a service staff here. When the waiter saw Suan Tang and Liu Liangxin, he made a blessing and said respectfully, "To adults." Bang bang bang. After a knock on the door of the reception room opened from the inside. Saudi Arabia saw Suan Tang and Liu Liangxin and said, "You two are here, please hurry up." Suan Tang and Liu Liangxin walked into the conference room. There were three familiar faces among them, Ziachuan, Sun Cakesun, and Suan Min. There was also one person who was unfamiliar, but judging from his military uniform, he should be from the Jiangnan military region. When Suan Min saw Suan Tang came in, he immediately stood up to greet him and asked eagerly, "How are you? Are you okay?" Suan Tang shook her head and said, "It's okay." Ziachuan looked calm, looked at Liu Liangxin, and nodded slightly. Liu Liangxin also nodded, and then she subconsciously looked at Sun Cakesun. Their eyes happened to collide, and Sun Cakesun immediately looked away. She frowned. The look in Sun Cakesun's eyes just now made her feel disgusted. Several people sat down one after another. Su and Tang looked at everyone on the other side and took the lead to ask, I don't know why you came to Chiang City? Seeing Su and Tang's serious expression, Su and Min felt that the atmosphere suddenly became solemn. He was slightly startled and then looked at Xia Chuan. Xia Chuan shrugged and said clearly, I'm the one leading the way. You are the leader this time, so of course you have to answer in the current situation. Su and Tang regards herself as representing Chiang City and regards the other party as another force, even if there is her own brother among them. Su and Min smiled. They were both brothers and sisters, so they had somewhat similar personalities. He was here to represent the military, so he should look like the military. Family ties are family ties, and business matters are business matters. He calmed down and said, I heard that the supreme ruler of Chiang City is Luo Ren. Why don't you see Luo Ren? Could it be that he looks down on me? This aggressive tone made Xia Chuan stunned. The opposite person was his own sister. The supreme ruler of Chiang City is indeed Chief Luo Ren. It's just an unlucky time for you to come here. Chief Luo Ren is out on business and is not in the city. Su and Tang was not afraid at all and told the truth directly. If you lie about this kind of thing, it will be difficult to complete it. You can only tell the truth. HMPH. Sun Cakesun snorted coldly. Something happened when he was out. I think he hid on purpose. Su and Min frowned, with a hint of displeasure clearly flashing in his eyes. It was okay for him to talk to Su and Tang like this, but when someone used such a tone to question his sister, he, as an elder brother, would definitely be unhappy. But Su and Tang looked as usual and said, is Chief Luo Ren afraid of you? Does he know you are coming? Or does he owe you money? Sun Cakesun's face turned red when asked these questions, and he couldn't say anything to refute him after holding it in for a long time. Seeing this, Su and Tang sneered, since there is none, why would Brother Ren hide on purpose? Seeing his sister's counterattack, Su and Min felt relieved, then smiled slightly and said, okay, since Luo Ren is not here, I will tell you the purpose of coming here this time. After a pause, he continued, to be honest with you, our primary purpose of coming here is to investigate the living environment of the people here to see if they are being exploited and treated as unworthy of human beings. I just came all the way here and saw all the scenes on the roadside. Obviously, Chiang City is not such a force, Commander. Su, you are a bit one-sided. Who knows that those on the roadside are not what they want us to see? If we want to know whether the hundreds of thousands of people in Chiang City are living in dire straits, I think we must conduct a comprehensive investigation. Only then can we make a conclusion. Sun Cakesun suddenly spoke. Although his expression was calm, resentment could still be seen in his eyes. Su and Min took a deep breath, ignored Sun Cakesun, and continued, the reason for the survey is to evaluate whether Chiang City is an evil force or a viable force. The most important decisive factor that determines the assessment result is the people's way of survival. If the rulers of the local power treat the people as slaves and livestock, then needless to say, this place will definitely be judged as an evil force. In this way, our military will send troops to replace the evil force's management personnel. If it is determined to be a survivable force, the military will not send troops and can provide assistance, including weapons, ammunition, and food supplies. Of course, these things need to be applied for with valid reasons and corresponding evidence. The decisive factor in determining a survivable force is also the people's way of survival. As long as the people are not treated as slaves and livestock, killed and oppressed at will, then it can be determined as a survivable force. Su and Tang nodded with a relaxed look on her face. That was the purpose of coming here, so she didn't need to worry, because the people of Chiang City were not slaves or livestock, but serious residents. She smiled contemptuously and said, in this case, you can take a closer look at the lives of the residents in the city, or ask them face to face. He glanced at Sun Cakesun and continued, we must make it clear. We are innocent, and we are not afraid of others smearing us. Sun Cakesun's face turned red, he snorted coldly and looked away. Su and Min felt even more relaxed when he saw Su and Tang's confident look, because what Sun Cakesun just said made sense. Showing off would exist in any era. Just what you see on the road may be deliberately arranged for outsiders to see, so as to paralyze outsiders. He smiled softly and said, "Okay, we will make a fair and just assessment." From the bright sun to sunset, Suan Min and others finally completed their survey. On the city wall, Suan Tong looked into the distance. Almost every day at sunset, she would be here, looking forward to whether that person would return. Someone climbed onto the city wall, and when the Cheyenne March soldiers on duty saw a strange face, someone immediately shouted, "This is an important military place. No one can enter." Suan Tong turned around when she heard the sound, saw the person coming, waved her hand and said, "It's okay." When the Xianxing army soldiers on duty heard this, they immediately responded, "Yes." The person who came was none other than Suan Min. With a smile on his face, he walked up to Suan Tong and said with emotion, "Before I came here, I really underestimated Xiang City. I didn't expect that this place is like a small society with industry classifications, hospitals, temples, etc. What surprised me most is that there are schools." He looked at the sunset and exclaimed, "At this time, I'm still thinking of building a school and providing free food for students. It is really unbelievable. I really want to meet that Luo Ren now." Immediately he looked at Suan Tong and suddenly asked with a smile, "And Tong, what is your relationship with that Luo Ren?" When Suan Tong heard this, she was stunned. If asked by ordinary people, she would definitely speak up. But when asked by her own brother, she couldn't think of how to speak. Looking at the sunset and sunset on the horizon, she had an idea and replied, "He is like the sunset, and I'm the sunset." Chapter 275, Master cheats his apprentice. The sea of clouds rolled, the sun rose and set, and in the blink of an eye, Luo Ren had been in the Cheyenne Wu Dao sect for more than half a month. The strong strength provided him with great help in learning swordsmanship and boxing skills. The ancients said that it takes 100 days to practice swordsmanship, but for Luo Ren, it does not take 100 days, only half a month. Although the strength and accuracy of the sword are enough, not at the level of master, but still considered proficient. In the future, as long as you practice hard and cooperate with actual combat, your improvement speed will definitely be rapid, and it will be easy to become a sword master. As for boxing, it requires more skills than swordsmanship, requires a lot of moves, and is more difficult to practice than swordsmanship. Therefore, Luo Ren can only be regarded as a beginner. Counting the time in the past, I have been out for nearly a month without realizing it, and I don't know what is going on in Xiang City. Luo Ren looked at the sea of clouds and thought for a long time. It was time to go back, but before that, there was one more thing to do. He went straight towards Cheyenne Wu Hall without stopping. Usually during the day, Taoist King Suan would meditate in Cheyenne Wu Hall. When I arrived at the door, I looked in. Sure enough, Taoist King Suan was sitting cross-legged under the statue of San King. He said to the Taoist boy guarding the door, "Excuse me, Luo Ren, please see the real person, donor." Later, the little Taoist boy responded, then walked into the main hall, walked to Taoist King Suan, and whispered something in a low voice. After the little Taoist boy finished speaking, Taoist King Suan stood up and turned to look at Luo Ren. With a faint smile on his face, he walked over, walked closer and stroked his beard and asked, "What does the little benefactor want from the old Taoist?" Luo Ren bowed slightly and responded politely, "It's been nearly a month since I came out. It's time for me to go back. I'm here to say goodbye to the real person." Taoist King Suan nodded slightly and said, "In life, there is always a time to say goodbye." Luo Ren bowed slightly again, pondered for a moment, and then said, "Before I left, I thought for a long time that zombies and animals are evolving faster and faster, and their number is far greater than that of us humans. The Cheyenne Wu Taoist sect is located in Cheyenne Wu Mountain, so there is no need to worry too much about the zombie crisis, but evolved animals have to be guarded against. And the hundreds of people in the Taoist sect, except for you, are almost all ordinary people. If a single evolved animal attacks, it will be nothing. However, if you are afraid of forming a group, then even though you, the real person, are powerful in combat, it will be difficult to take into account the safety of everyone. The little benefactor is right. I wonder what the little benefactor can do." Taoist King Suan asked, stroking his beard gently. With such a straightforward question, Luo Ren naturally did not beat around the bush and said with a smile, I can make Xianwu Mountain have a modern army. How do you say this? Taoist King Xuan asked curiously. Luo Ren smiled slightly and said nothing, but the scene in front of Taoist King Xuan suddenly changed, and the whole person instantly appeared in a pure space, with nothing else but him. As the head of the Xianwu Dao sect and a grandmaster level figure, his reaction was completely different from when Li Xian and Li Zixu entered the agreement space. His expression was still calm and his aura was still stable. Although there was nothing around him, he could deduce that this must have something to do with Luo Ren. He immediately faced the air and asked, Little donor, where is the old man at the moment? From the outside the world, Taoist King Xuan's voice rang in Luo Ren's mind, and he immediately replied, please take a look, real person. Taoist King Xuan looked forward, and suddenly blue light appeared out of thin air, then concentrated, and finally turned into a large piece of paper, with words densely written on it, City State Agreement, Taoist King Xuan read the content on the paper, and finished it after a few minutes. Now he understood what Luo Ren had just said, that the Xianwu Taoist sect could have a modern army. I see, such a miraculous sight has never been seen or heard of by the old Taoist, who has lived for 86 years. The little benefactor kept it secret. Then he sighed, demons, ferocious beasts, it seems like there are still many mysteries in this world. After sighing with emotion, he looked at the agreement again, considered it for a moment, shook his head, and said, little donor, please let me go out. Luo Ren from the outside was surprised at first, and then a little disappointed. It seemed that incorporating the Xianwu Dao sect into the city-state was not possible. Then he thought to himself, system, cancel the signing of the city-state agreement. As soon as these words came out, a few seconds later, King Xuan Taoist in front of him slowly came back to his senses, and he looked at Luo Ren in surprise. Luo Ren said apologetically, sorry, I pulled you into the signing space without your consent. Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard and smiled softly, it doesn't matter. The little donor's move really impressed the old Taoist priest. People passing by could not help but look at him when they saw an old man and a young man. There were also some girls who winked at Luo Ren. That night, many people saw him punching the crippled ape. He was so young and so powerful, and quite handsome at the same time. I wonder what young woman wouldn't like him. Facing these eyes, Luo Ren pondered for a moment, and couldn't help but ask, Master, are you really not planning to sign the city-state agreement? Taoist King Xuan stared at Luo Ren for a while. Suddenly, he laughed and said, the donor is right. No matter how strong the Taoist is, it is difficult for him to defeat four hands with two fists. If the enemies attack in groups, I will definitely not be able to take care of everything. People's safety is in danger, but signing this contract of yours can solve this problem. It's just that the old Taoist Xianan Yi is used to it, and doesn't like to be restrained. After a pause, he continued, but for the safety of these hundreds of people, this agreement must be signed, so we have to find a way to get the best of both worlds. Stroking his beard and thinking for a long time, he suddenly smiled and said, yes. He turned his head and looked at the Taoist boy at the door and ordered, Zhi Mao, go and ask the crane to come over. Seeing Luo Ren's blank expression, he explained, the old man won't sign, but others can sign. I will pass the position of head to Zion later. Little donor, you can sign an agreement with him. Luo Ren's mouth opened slightly, a little surprised. He said this, Xianan Yi was used to it, and he was unwilling to sign. It was over, and he asked his apprentice to come. Why did it sound like he was trying to trick his apprentice? Soon, Zhang Ziyan rushed over, first respectfully said to Taoist King Xuan, Master. Then he faced Luo Ren, cupped his fists and said, Donor Luo. Taoist King Xuan spoke directly and said, Ziyan, I asked you to come here to do something for me. Are you willing? Zhang Ziyan said, Teacher has great kindness, not to mention one thing, but 10,000 things, and my disciples will not hesitate to do so. Well, Taoist King Xuan was very satisfied. Suddenly, his expression and tone became serious, and said, Xian Wu Taoist sect, Zhang Ziyan, the 27th generation successor, obeys the order. From today on, you are a member of Xian Wu Taoist sect. Leader, there are over 100 disciples of the Xian Wu Dao sect, you will rule them from now on. Zhang Ziyan was shocked, and at a loss, and continued, Master, how can you do this? How can I hold the position of the head of the sect, because my disciple is still a beginner? This is absolutely impossible. If you are asked to do it, just do it. No need to say anything more. Taoist King Xuan scolded, then turned to look at Luo Ren and said, Little benefactor, Ziyan is now the head of the Xian Wu Taoist sect. You can sign a city-state agreement with him. He also told Zhang Ziyan, you will enter a mysterious space later, and an agreement will appear in front of you. Just press your fingerprints, Zhang. Ziyan looked confused, but still nodded. Disciple, I remember, when Luo Ren saw this drama of master cheating his apprentice, he pursed his lips, and tried his best not to laugh. Taoist King Xuan looked calm, and said to him, Little donor, let's get started. Luo Ren suppressed a smile and nodded, thinking silently in his mind, start the signing of the city-state agreement. The target is Zhang Ziyan, the leader of the Xian Wu Dao sect. Bite. The agreement signing space is opened, and the target Zhang Ziyan's consciousness has entered the signing space. The picture in front of Zhang Ziyan gradually blurred, eventually disappeared, and then suddenly brightened. After a brief blindness, he could clearly see his surroundings, and found that he was in a strange space. There was nothing up, down, left, and right. When he was confused and surprised, a blue light appeared out of thin air in front of him, then gathered together, and finally turned into a large piece of paper. Seeing the words on the paper, he thought to himself, this should be the agreement master said. Press it down with your palm. The master had a great destiny, so he went to read the content of the agreement carefully, because he felt that anyone who read the content seriously would be disrespectful to his master. Therefore, without any hesitation, he raised his right hand and pressed it directly. At this time, Luo Ren's ears were filled with system prompts. Bite. The city-state agreement was signed. Zhang Ziyan also heard such words in his ears, and then the scene in front of him changed. When he opened his eyes again, he immediately saw a familiar scene. He looked at his master, Taoist King Xuan, and asked blankly, Master, what exactly is the agreement? Taoist King Xuan chuckled and said, I don't know much about this matter, so you need to ask Donor Luo for advice. Upon hearing this, Zhang Ziyan cupped his fists towards Luo Ren and said, May I ask, Donor Luo, what is the agreement? Didn't you read the content of the agreement? Luo Ren asked. Zhang Ziyan shook his head. You are following master's words too much. You just signed it without reading the content. If this is a contract of betrayal, you will suffer a big loss. Luo Ren complained in his heart, and then secretly asked, System, can you directly send him the contents of the city-state agreement? Can. He smiled slightly in his heart and said quickly, send the content of the city-state agreement to Zhang Ziyan. Bite. The content of the city-state agreement is being transmitted. Bite. The transmission of the city-state protocol content is completed. Looking at Zhang Ziyan again, his confused expression turned into surprise, and he murmured to himself, it's amazing. After a long time, after receiving all the contents of the city-state agreement, he came back to his senses, looked at Luo Ren, hesitated for a while, and shouted, Sir. The word sir could not be uttered. Seeing this, Luo Ren quickly said, Prince Ziyan, just call me as usual. Zhang Ziyan breathed a sigh of relief and said, that's very good. The agreement has been signed. How can we realize the modernized army that the young benefactor mentioned? Taoist King Xuan suddenly said. Luo Ren looked left and right, and then said, I need an open space as big as the square in front of the Xian Wu Hall. Although Zhang Ziyan was already the head of the Xian Wu Taoist sect, he still did not dare to speak when his master was here, so he could only look at Taoist King Xuan. Taoist King Xuan stroked his beard, thought for a while, and said, come with me. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.